you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Case Series. This is episode 21, Under the Bridge. And we are going to examine some data that has kind of been lost in the mix and provide yet another angle that has not been properly explored in this case, which, of course, this is Mindshock. That's what we do. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Like and share this podcast. Keep the awareness up in this case. That's how cases get solved. You could also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for a case topic. Logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind. Leave them in the comment section. Okay, we're going into Mindshock territory right off the bat here. So, we have addressed the arguing couple, so to speak, in previous podcasts. This theoretically could have been Abby or Libby arguing with their abductor or abductors, multiple individuals. Now, what we haven't properly explored is a popular / semi-popular hangout area under the northeast entrance of the bridge. Not the private drive underneath the bridge, not the side of the bridge where Abby and Libby could have been taken, but the opposite side that could possibly provide a vantage point of events that transpired. Now, I was first introduced to this aspect of the case, of course, on Reddit, a lot of different subreddits. This one's the actual Delphi Murders subreddit several years ago, 4 years ago. The under the bridge area, northeast entrance of the bridge to the right side, not as presumed the private drive underneath the bridge, posted by user deleted. So we don't know who this was. May have been a local, possibly. There's a photograph, an accompanying photograph here with random bottles here in this area. So this looks like it could have definitely been a popular spot. So let's go through some commentary, some by locals, some not by locals, and see what we can make of this information. So this photo here supposedly was taken March 24th, 2017. And this, according to, again, multiple users deleted here, this was a popular party spot under the northeast corner of the bridge. And that begs the question, if this is a popular / semi-popular party spot where people drink and possibly do drugs as well, and this is a day off from school, is it possible there were even more individuals, particularly in this area, than previously surmised? Were individuals there that never even came forward to police? And do they know the individuals that Abby and Libby may or may not have had a scheduled meeting with that day, or possibly just ran into older kids that were partying in this so-called party spot under the northeast corner, the entrance of the bridge? It's curious. It's definitely curious. How can anybody not think this is curious? So, another post here by user since deleted. So, I wanted to post this real quick to talk about what Flannel Shirt Guy and others have referred to as, quote, under the bridge area, end quote. This photo was posted by GH Moderator, a Delphi citizen, to explain what people actually mean by, quote, under the bridge. This is a well-known hangout for people, especially teenagers, and it is located right next to the northeast entrance of the bridge to the left. Figured it would be interesting because many, including myself, have always thought that under the bridge was actually underneath the bridge where you have the road that turns into a private drive, but in fact, they were talking about this very area where Flannel Shirt Guy mentioned to Derek that he had seen a couple. And this is the arguing couple. And again, plenty of conflicting information. Some allege that he never said he saw the couple, but that he heard a couple. Some people think this could have been Abby or Libby, but if this is the other side of the bridge, what does that mean? Are there other individuals here? Were there other individuals who were witness to this crime, abduction, whatever it was, at the in the beginning stages, before it descended into murder? Maybe if it wasn't a planned murder in the first place, what if there were multiple disagreements? Are there witnesses that have still not come forward? And maybe they didn't come forward because is it possible that Abby and Libby had some kind of altercation with individuals, possibly not Bridge Guy, and these individuals have nothing to do with what ultimately happened to them or whoever harmed them? Now, what else is very, very curious is, and I mean, this has gotten me thinking outside the box more. Is it possible, again, that Bridge Guy might be unconnected, and it happened, the encounter with Bridge Guy might have happened earlier, later, whatever the case may be, probably earlier, and then let's say Bridge Guy left. Let's say they did have words or some kind of an argument that led law enforcement to honestly believe he was responsible, but let's say he wasn't. Let's say there was whatever happened, and they were actually walking back across the bridge. They walked all the way over to the north side again, and then had some kind of altercation with whomever was under the bridge on the northeast party spot area. And then is it possible they didn't actually cross the creek? They went down to the general area where they were found from the north side, and it had something to do with possibly individuals that were on the northeast corner party spot, or, again, if they were taken elsewhere, they still could have possibly left from the northeast corner and not the south end of the bridge. Again, so many unknowns. This is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. We're not going to hallucinate likelihoods or hallucinate that something is known for sure that is not known for sure based on conflicting law enforcement statements, which may or may not be true. Again, if there is no law enforcement corruption, they still could be mistaken. Again, that whole area of the state does not have a high clearance rate for murder, so to just pretend that they're infallible, quite silly, quite silly. Another post here by Deleted. Also, I was just being informed that, and I quote, it has been updated. The couple that's said to have been seen under the bridge by Flannel Shirt Guy, that was a mistake from Becky relaying it. Derek said that he, Flannel Shirt Guy, saw them on the bridge, not under. Becky corrected it. And again, make of that what you will. So many broken telephones. Is that really what happened? And then if that wasn't, who's going to correct the correction, etc.? Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. What else is curious is, of course, if Bridge Guy is the perpetrator, his possible knowledge of that party spot under the northeast corner. Did he check that spot to make sure nobody was there, or did he not know about it? Furthermore, if Bridge Guy was law enforcement or connected to law enforcement and he didn't know about that spot and he was witnessed committing the crime or partially committing the crime, and there is some kind of vast conspiracy, would they want to shut up those witnesses? Again, just speculating, going down various rabbit holes. I'm not saying any of this is true or untrue or likely or not likely. It's just curious to examine this supposedly popular, semi-popular spot under the northeast corner of the bridge. Another issue here, we will go to the Libby and Abby subreddit. This was posted very recently by Legitimate Step. In Pursuit, Abby and Libby. I just watched an episode of In Pursuit with John Walsh entitled Witness to Murder. In the second half of the episode, they feature Abby and Libby's case. Doug Carter is heard saying to the reporter about the girls being at the trails, what were the girls doing here? Were they here to meet someone? Who did they meet? Who did they associate with? This episode aired 1st April 2020. Carter seems to be questioning whether the girls had plans that their families didn't know about, questioning who they were meeting. During the episode, Carter is near tears as he discusses the case with Callahan Walsh. You can easily see that he is, and was, deeply affected by these murders, and that it has become part of him and his daily mission to find the truth. I always respected him, but after watching this, I felt a deep understanding of his heart. He cares deeply. It's easy to see how remote and dangerous the trails are because of the terrain. Carter says, "I was sick, literally sick, when asked about the moment he found out the girls had been found deceased." The show also opens up the suspicion that the girls were being followed that day, even stalked by someone they knew. The timeline presented in the show is that the murders happened quickly between 3:07 and 3:27. Detective Perrine of the ISP is also interviewed. He says, quote, "Once the girls got to that trail, someone was following them," end quote. He is definitive that someone was following them, and he didn't say we think someone was following them. He said no, someone was following. We just don't know who it was or what the connection was to the girls. It gave me a peek into their thinking, and they have strongly suspected this person had some connection to the girls. Many of you have probably seen this episode. I posted about it today because I heard things I hadn't heard before from law enforcement, questioning what the girls were doing, who they were meeting, and saying that the girls were being followed once they hit the trail. We always hear what we want to hear, and I've always believed there was a connection to the girls with this killer. But I had never heard law enforcement say that. I also had never heard them say that they know the girls were being followed on the trail. One of the statements made by law enforcement here is that the evidence leads detectives to believe this was a double homicide. I found that statement confusing. What do they mean leads detectives to believe it was a murder? Wasn't that obvious from the moment of the discovery or very soon after? So that seemed vague to me. Carter also comments about the hat he was wearing when discussing the suspect. Carter says someone knows the voice and the killer is between the two sketches and that someone knows who he is. This show was different than others I've seen about those murders. I just thought I'd share about it. Someone does know who he is. Some comments here, of course, asking how would they know that they were being followed for sure. Some people surmise that it was from the things in the recording, but as I've stated in the previous episode regarding the trail cam, is it possible that there are other cameras somewhere else on people's private property surrounding, and there's more footage somewhere somehow? What's obvious is that, of course, law enforcement is working with more information than the public has, but exactly the nature of that information, obviously, that is unknown. Another post here by Conscious Pen. I don't know why they went there that day, but I have a suspicion that someone was tracking them. Geocache would be an excellent way to not only track young girls, but also leave tracking devices. Are caches little trinkets or things a young person would be attracted to? I am sure that some person with knowledge of how to evade detection could have used this system to follow them, and I am not pointing at anyone already mentioned as POI because I don't believe that lead, because I think Bridge Guy is a careful planner who would have covered his identity well, as is apparent after all those years and no arrest. And I will be doing an upcoming episode on the geocaching theory, and there's actually a lot there. There's a lot more there than appears to be there. Certainly enough to not dismiss it outright. Post by Xana Zarita here. I am positive Bridge Guy stalked them once he saw them on the trails, but this doesn't mean that they knew him or he knew them. The families have repeatedly stated that their decision to go on the trails was a last-minute decision. I don't believe they were catfished, as I think that would make it easier to solve. And again, factoring in the information about the party spot under the northeast part of the bridge, I mean, was that party spot known to them? Had they been to that particular spot previously, or had older friends of theirs been, or maybe friends of theirs who had older brothers or sisters who had been, and that was somehow a factor? Again, I don't know. A response here: I don't subscribe to the catfish or they went to meet someone theory, but as far as the plan being last minute, the family is only knowing what they know to the best of their knowledge. The girls could have planned the trip earlier between them. We can never say for certainty one way or another. Oh, a logical post here. Very, very logical, and that's something that people really, really do forget. It's not that people are being dishonest, although that happens as well, but people can simply be mistaken. They're saying what they think is true. Same goes for law enforcement. Law enforcement are not infallible deities. Even if there is no conspiracy, they could very well be honest in presenting information they believe to be true, but that information is not actually true, and that's why so many cases are unsolved. Another post here. I don't believe it was last minute. It could be they had no intention of going there, and someone asked them if they wanted to go there, or tricked them into going. Follow a post. So the families are lying, question mark, or the girls lied to their families, question mark. Response: I usually agree with you, but I can tell you as a teenager I frequently lied to my parents. I was a badly behaved rebel, though. I'm just pointing out that the families could believe the girls made a last minute decision to go to the trail, but it may have been planned to possibly meet up with people beforehand. I would tell friends and families I'd go places all the time, but only sometimes would show up or go somewhere else entirely, making them think it was one place but actually another. Teenagers can be unpredictable. Not saying this is definite, but something to keep in mind. And the response here, kind of a miscommunication. I can get behind that. Okay, the other thing is, they could have told their parents last minute, leading them to believe it was last minute. Or maybe they had friends that were going and they weren't going to go, and then talking between them, they decided, oh, maybe they will go, so it appeared to be last minute and there was no deception involved on anybody's part, per se. Again, just going through all the variables. I mean, there's always goofs jumping out. So they're lying? So they're lying? Everybody's lying? Why would they lie? There's many scenarios where nobody is lying. Another post here. Knowing the victim's background is usually designated to a specific person who is a professional in that forensic field. I had heard at first they thought it was a murder-suicide, but I don't know where I heard this or why law enforcement may have thought that at first. I could be mistaken. They know the girls were followed because Abby says in the recording, "Is the creepy guy still behind me?" That is in quotations. I'd also be more curious about the hat comment because it is debated whether there is a hat or not. And then, of course, we have the leaked text. Not really going to go into that, but a post here by Damned Princess. One of the people who discovered the bodies that day has described a knife wound to the chest, with knife still in the body and her hand on the hilt of the knife. This could have looked a lot like a murder-suicide if only going by the look at the scene from several feet away. A few scenarios come to mind. One, bridge guy stabbed her before she died. It's possible she tried to pull the knife out, not knowing any better. Two, bridge guy put the knife in her hand, grasped on top of her hand, and stabbed her, leaving her hand on the hilt. 3, bridge guy stabbed her, put her hand on the knife in his staging of the scene. If this is the case, then the symbolism here is important. Making these girls' death look like a murder-suicide intentionally would be a message that bridge guy would likely be livid that his message is being kept from everyone, even the families. If this is the case, then bridge guy probably knew one or both girls and their families. Why else send a message? And that is curious if the perpetrator or perpetrators stage this scene to make it look like a murder-suicide, confusing everybody and also starting some rumors. Very, very bizarre. But to just, again, keeping in mind, if we now have a relatively well-known party spot on the northeast side of the bridge, how does that factor into everything? Because, again, there could have been witnesses. They could have been meeting with other kids there. Again, if this is well-known, there's bottles there, it's a well-known party spot, has been for some kind, also opens the door to other individuals possibly connected to drugs or some other illicit activities of some kind. And how does that factor into the whole bridge guy situation and the timeline. These comments that they were followed, does that mean they were followed from the parking lot where they were dropped off? What does that mean exactly? How many other individuals are involved? And then, of course, the question that has kind of been around since the beginning, is it possible they were taken elsewhere and then returned? And that would seem to answer a whole lot of questions if that were the case. So plenty more to come, plenty more to keep in mind, but just wanted to address this under the bridge area that does not get a lot of discussion, of course, and it could just open the door to a lot more individuals being there, possibly that have not disclosed themselves to the police. Hope you guys found another episode of Mindshock True Crime interesting and informative. You can support the podcast, donate to our PayPal, just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topological analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast, and of course, like and share this podcast to keep the awareness up in this case. It's not going anywhere out of the public sphere of discussion until this case is solved, of course. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Case Series. This is episode 22, Geocaching. We're going to go over the geocache theory. Possibly one of the most overlooked theory. There was some discussion on it early on, and it seems to have been basically completely abandoned. And we will be looking at very, very curious details and some possible mind-shocking revelations in respect to the case and possibly moving it forward in some fashion. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, find it interesting, want to help support Mindshock, get out more mind-shocking episodes, not only in this case, but in other cases as well, and keep awareness up, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Like and share the podcast. Social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Alright, so let's jump right in here. Hopefully you guys are all caught up on the previous 21 episodes. There's a lot of information to go over, of course. Some of it has been gone over, some of it has not. So, first of all, it is established that Kelsey and Libby did go geocaching. This was a thing they did. For those that don't know, geocaching is an outdoor recreational activity in which participants use a global positioning system receiver or mobile device and other navigational techniques to hide and seek containers called geocaches or caches at specific locations marked by coordinates all over the world. So this is also nicknamed caching or simply treasure hunting. So that is curious. On geocaching.com, here is the layout here. It is the Geocaching Hiding Guidelines Introduction. Geocaching HQ has developed these guidelines in collaboration with the international community of volunteers and geocachers since September 2000. So this is not a new activity by any stretch of the imagination. People have been doing this for quite some time. Personally, I don't know if I've ever known anybody who has done this, so I don't know if its popularity varies by area or region or whatnot, but this is something that has been done for quite some time. Together, we review and adapt the guidelines as the world changes and the game evolves. Following the geocaching guidelines is important to protect the game and the environment in which we play. With these guidelines, we aim to balance the needs and rights of the geocaching community, land managers, and environment to ensure that geocaching can be enjoyed for years to come. We encourage you to find at least 20 geocaches before hiding one. The more variety of geocaches you find, the better you will understand how to create an enjoyable experience for other geocachers. Find additional guidance and hiding caches in our Help Center. For publication, geocaches must follow the guidelines and any applicable regional geocaching policies. Okay. Geocaching HQ and community volunteers are not in any way responsible or liable for their caches or their placements. All aspects of your geocache and its placement are your responsibility, and you may be held liable for any resulting consequences. Alright. Here's a charter member, Brian's Nat, and here's a quote here listed from him. When you go to hide a geocache, think of the reason you are bringing people to that spot. If the only reason is for the geocache, then find a better spot. And are those haunting words? Because if we have here, not just in the Delphi case, but in other cases, if there are criminals, serial killers, wannabe serial killers, who are somehow using geocaching to find victims, I mean, that's a haunting quote right there. Geocache location, obey local laws. All local laws and land management policies apply. This refers to both the placement of the geocache and the journey required to reach it. Do not place caches in a location that requires or encourages geocachers to trespass or pass markers that prohibit access. Is that a factor as well regarding Ron Logan's land or other land disputes in the area? Get permission. By submitting a cache page, you agree that you have all necessary permissions from the landowner or land manager to hide your geocache at that location. If we receive complaints or become aware that a cache is in an inappropriate location, even if not prohibited by law, it may be disabled or archived. In the case of public property, you must get the permission from the agency or association that manages the land. As the cache owner, you're responsible for determining who to contact to get permission. Even if you are certain that geocaching is permitted on particular public property, make sure that you follow any requirements established by the landowner or land management agency before you place the cache. As community volunteers reviewers become aware of geocache placement policies for a certain location, they may add them to the regional geocaches policies wiki. Private. If you have permission to place a geocache on private property, indicate this on the cache page for the benefit of the reviewer and those seeking the cache. A community volunteer may ask you to provide contact information of the person giving permission. Choose location wisely. Check for minimum distance. Geocache containers and physical stages of different geocaches must be at least 0.1 miles, 528 feet, or 161 meters apart. A physical stage is any object placed by the cache owner, such as a container or a tag. There is no minimum required distance for non-physical stages, including reference points, trailheads, parking coordinates, and virtual stages. Physical stages within the same multi- or mystery cache, earth caches, and virtual caches, as they do not have physical waypoints. Geocaching HQ may further restrict geocaches in areas where geocache saturation becomes a concern. Okay. You know what else is curious, though? How many criminals use geocaching just for kicks? For example, putting weapons or drugs in them. It's kind of weird. It seems like this could be, or just even pranksters doing whatever. There's pranksters involved in everything. You would think there'd be a certain amount involved in geocaching, but I don't recall too much of that on the news or being reported anywhere. It's kind of weird. Must be accessible long term. Hide your cache to have a long life. Temporary caches intended to stay active for fewer than 3 months will not be published. Caches intended to move will not be published. Availability. Caches must be available most of the week. No contact required. Caches cannot require geocachers to contact the cache owner or anyone else. Do not bury. Do not bury geocaches either partially or completely. You must not create a hole in the ground to place or find a geocache. The only exception is if a property owner gives explicit permission to create a hole to place the cache, which you must provide to the reviewer and state on the cache page. A cache cannot require the finder to dig to reach the cache. Do not damage property. Do not damage, deface, or destroy public or private property, especially archaeological or historical sites, when you place your cache. That'd be kind of funny if somebody's placing a cache at like Stonehenge or something and they're messing it up. Do not place caches in a location that require or encourages geocachers to damage, deface, or destroy public or private property, especially archaeological or historical sites. Do not harm plants, animals, or environment. Do not harm plant or animal life when you place your cache. Do not place caches in a location that require or encourages geocachers to harm plant or animal life. In some areas, geocaching activity may need to cease for portions of the year due to sensitivity of some species. The only exception if a property owner gives explicit permission to attach a cache to a tree with hardware, for example, the nails. In this case, you must provide the explicit permission to the reviewer and state it on the cache page. So keep in mind, these are current rules and guidelines. It's curious to see how much of that evolved from, let's say, around the year 2000. Was there a lot less rules and regulations back then? Stay away from restricted areas. Do not place geocaches in restricted, prohibited, or otherwise inappropriate locations. Some areas have additional regulations and laws that further restrict geocache placement. Geocaching HQ staff or a community volunteer may temporarily disable or permanently archive the cache page if any of the following is reported. This list is not comprehensive. A landowner or land manager reports the geocache. The geocache is in an area that is sensitive to additional foot or vehicular traffic. Examples may include archaeological sites, historical sites, and cemeteries. The geocache is on railroad property or right-of-way. The geocache is problematic due to its proximity to a public structure. Examples include highway bridges, major roadways, dams, government buildings, schools, military installations, hospitals, airports, and other areas defined in the Regional Geocaching Policies Wiki. I wonder if there's a geocache around Area 51. That'd be curious. Locations that strongly encourage or require access through restricted locations. What the heck? Explore outer space. With permission, geocachers may place caches in space, either on other planets or in spacecraft. That's cool. Geocache container. Choose container wisely. The container must hold the logbook. The ideal container is waterproof. To avoid confusion or suspicion, if your cache is found by a non-geocacher, follow these tips where possible. Label your container as a geocache. Choose a transparent container to show that the contents are harmless. Include instructions for finders. Do not place containers that could be perceived as bombs or other dangerous items. If the container has military markers, permanently cover or remove them. Geocache contents, must include logbook. For all physical caches, there must be a logbook for geocaches to record their visit. The logbook must be physical, replaceable, easy to sign, enclosed within a container. Examples: notebook, paper scroll. Family and outdoor friendly. Geocaching is a family-friendly and outdoor-friendly game. Cache contents must be suitable for all ages and suitable for the outdoors. Do not place any following items in the caches: illegal material, dangerous materials such as explosives, ammunition, lighters, knives, drugs, or alcohol. Edible or scented items, items that can melt such as crayons or lip balm, items that can expand in the cold such as liquids. Geocache page submission review process. Before submitting a cache page, get accurate GPS coordinates. GPS usage is an essential element of hiding and seeking caches. The cache owner must visit the geocache location to get accurate coordinates with a GPS-enabled device. For at least part of the search, the cache must require finders to navigate with a GPS-enabled device to specific coordinates necessary to finding the cache. Place your geocache. A geocache must be in place and ready to be found before you submit the cache page for review. Don't hide caches far from home. Vacation holiday caches are usually not published because they are difficult to maintain. It's best to place physical caches in your area so you can respond quickly to maintenance needs. In rare circumstances, a vacation cache with an acceptable maintenance plan might be published. Now that's curious too, because if there's a person of interest or an individual involved with geocaching and there's a geocache by the bridge, does that limit the distance that the individual would have to live from the geocache? Plan ahead. If you want your cache to be published on a specific date, please allow enough time for you and the reviewer to work through possible issues. Keep in mind that it can take several days after each change before the reviewer has time to look at your cache page. Okay. All right. Review, communication. No precedents. There are no precedents for placing geocaches. Past publication of a similar geocache is not justification for publication of a new geocache. If a geocache was published that you feel violated the guidelines, you may report it. However, the existing geocache may have been placed prior to a guideline change. Okay, a couple other things, and then we have maintain geocache container. To keep the geocache in proper working order, the cache owner must visit the geocache regularly. Fix reported problems such as replace full or wet logbook, replace broken or missing container, make sure the location is appropriate and change it if necessary, remove the geocache container and any physical stages within 60 days after the cache page is archived. Alright. So that's the general rundown from geocaching.com. Now let's see how this relates to the Delphi case. So some people believe a certain professor is responsible for geocaching. So let's start right here. This was posted by a true lady a couple years ago, I believe. I don't know if this was 2019 or prior. These are screenshots, so this might be even earlier. This might be a number of years back. I'll start with the professor theory. A while back, people were mulling over the geocache theory. I thought because of all the evidence, a social media connection was plausible. But it had to be something not very obvious. It had to be something that did not involve direct communication between Bridge Guy and the girls, because that would have been a one-and-done case a long time ago. Anyway, in geocaching, the more caches you do, the more knowledge you have of the storybook or path a user might follow as they chase the caches, and you can stalk them in a sense, make out what their next move might be. Knowing that Kelsey had been to the bridge and had brought Libby, and there was a cache there, I decided to check out who else had been to the cache. A month prior, a user had been there who resembled Bridge Guy a lot, so I decided to check him out. He has logged over 11,000 caches, but very few since the murders. It was like he suddenly stopped. I did a side-by-side and compared his account history to Kelsey's, and lo and behold, he had been to every single cache she had been to. She had also been to two of the caches he had laid. He had a lot of pictures up on his gallery, including a dead deer that had been sliced in half, clean, without any mess on the ground. It was one half of the deer, the back half. Totally thought he was a creeper. Did an overlay of his face against the sketch, and beside the epicanthal fold, which is substantial and perplexing, I could write an essay on the fold and what it could potentially mean. He is an exact match. So I decided to look into him further. Turns out he has a doctorate in anthropology and is a professor at a nearby university. He often works in Carroll County doing various archaeological digs with his students. The city of Delphi often has him come in for these things, and he's probably more familiar with the area than anyone. He is an avid outdoorsman and hiker. There's another connection to him that I cannot state because it was told to me in confidence, and I cannot verify that it is true. But it has to do with something left at the scene that would be of interest to him. Around the time of the murders, it appears that he started the process of divorce, or at least his marriage was at its end. I do not know the exact timeline of that, but it would be very interesting. This man is very interested in Neolithic tools and weapons. He does not live in Delphi, but about 45 minutes away. So where was he on Monday, February 13th? Well, the Sunday after the murders, on his Facebook page, there are pictures of him, along with photos of a small news outfit, taking pictures of him breaking ground for a land survey, which was commissioned in October 2016 by the city of Delphi at a historical cemetery less than a mile away from the bridge. It was a big deal and would have taken a lot of prep work on his part. On the Sunday after the murders, his students were all around and cameras were everywhere. However, I believe he was there on Monday, February 13th, preparing alone in the woods for this land survey. By the way, witnesses saw Bridge Guy entering from the Freedom Bridge area around 2 p.m. If he were coming from the cemetery where the land survey was being conducted, which by the way is not the same cemetery next to where the girls were found, he would have to cross or go under the Freedom Bridge, which would fit with accounts. And again, that doesn't mean those accounts were true. Now, Anna Williams has stated that she did not want Abby to go to the bridge, that she told her she would be grounded if she went. I didn't hear that detail before. Now, Anna Williams has stated that she did not want Abby to go to the bridge, that she told her she would be so grounded if she went. Why was that? Did Abby tell her she wanted to go there because Libby had gone there with Kelsey? Did Abby have a geocache account that Bridge Guy was watching, or did Libby have one? I don't know. The paragraph is speculation entirely. The POI of mine would have been able to know the next move was the bridge. Another thing that leads credence to the geocache theory is that the cache for the bridge was shut down right away, like as soon as the murders had been announced, as if law enforcement went and told the cache owner to shut it down, as if they suspected a potential connection from the beginning. My counterpoint there is not necessarily. They might have just not wanted the crime scene to be further contaminated with more people coming and going and getting in the way. I mean, it would seem like if they really thought well, I don't know, because if the geocache owner was involved in the crime, wouldn't they want the owner to come back so they can monitor him? Because they had to have been monitoring the area after the discovery of the bodies, regardless of whether they were there during the initial search or not. Obviously a point of contention. If you haven't listened to the previous episodes, make sure you check those out, especially the thermal imaging camera drone that did not show the bodies on the initial day of the search. So who knows? But either way, I don't know what to make of the geocache being shut down. Because if they really thought that, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I guess they would probably just want to limit the traffic as much as possible. So they probably would shut it down no matter what, I guess. I don't know. To answer your second question, I've heard that one or more of the girls may have been covered in a substance. However, I think that is unlikely because Bridge Guy would have had to either have the chemical waiting at the murder site in preparation or carried it with him when he arrived around 2 from the Freedom Bridge area. What I think happened is Bridge Guy put a gun to one of the girls' backs and then they complied. Maybe he said he would let them go and no one would get hurt if they did what he said, and they allowed him to tie them up, at which point it was too late for them to really struggle and managed to get DNA off him. Then he killed them with a knife or some kind of instrument. I think he was wearing gloves, like gardening gloves, and did not actually make any skin-to-skin contact. I think he also tried to touch them as little as possible with his gloves in the commission of the crime. Okay, very curious there regarding the geocache and a possible individual who could have been the owner of the geocache and the geocache activity of this individual. Let's go through a couple different Reddit posts here regarding the geocache. So this was posted on the subreddit Delphi Murders by Throwaway HATVL last year. Apparently, the girls were out geocaching. This is a global treasure hunting game that involves using apps of maps to find caches. The caches are boxes of items to swap and log your name or geocache username in, or they can be micro caches where you just log your name username. What if another geocacher was able to surmise that there would be 2 young girls planning to visit a remote location? The apps use satellite technology that knows your location. I'm not tech enough to know if it's possible for a nerd to utilize this to track someone down, but it seems unlikely unless they've very recently logged themselves as having found a cache in the vicinity of the murder, and he thought he would try to find them based on looking by the next nearest cache that they might likely visit. Also, just their name or username along with comments on the app under which caches you found might have given a predator too much information about them. Does anyone know if the police looked into this angle? And a couple responses here. That's an unconfirmed theory touted by a YouTube dude who has targeted multiple people and claimed multiple different theories. According to what the family said, the real known facts say the girls went to the bridge to get out of the house, hang out, take a walk, and take pictures on a bonus day off from school. The rest is total speculation. So I doubt if the police have put a lot of time into chasing down the geocache angle, and I doubt the killer would make himself so easily traceable as to leave a trail in a game like geocaching. This guy is a predator, not a teeny bopper, so says my opinion. Unless, of course, it is a younger guy that committed this crime or roped someone else into it. Is it possible that a younger guy knew about the geocaching and was associated with someone else who might have been involved in the crime who didn't know that geocaching was even a thing? And they might have not agreed to be part of the crime if they had known it would be easily traceable to a younger guy geocaching. Or even if they're two older guys, one of them knows about geocaching, one of them doesn't, and he doesn't tell the other guy. So if there's only one perpetrator, who knows? Then again, if the perpetrator is a complete loon, a schizophrenic of some kind, has a split personality, who knows? Again, we are not dealing with a normal individual. A normal individual does not commit a crime like this. Even your average criminal does not commit a crime like this. 2 victims in broad daylight, allegedly, or at least abducted, or maybe not even abducted. Again, we don't know the facts. If they went willingly with certain individuals at the bridge, if they were taken elsewhere and other individuals were involved in hurting them, and then they brought back the bodies, we don't have the facts in this case, no matter how much the coincidence theorists and the cognitive dissonant so-called true crime aficionados pretend to hallucinate that the facts are known. Maybe the facts are known to the police. If the video of the crime was sent to police, perhaps they know exactly what happened. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but unless someone has access to all the information law enforcement have access, sitting on the sidelines, it's nothing but hallucination to pretend that you know exactly how the crime went down, that the guy in the video, bridge guy, was responsible or solely responsible for whatever happened to them, and it happened exactly at the time alleged. That's just hallucinations. Those are just assumptions, hallucinations, and playing pretend. We don't do that on Mindshock. So, again, if we don't have those facts, perhaps maybe it is a more average criminal. But if the crime went down as alleged, we are not dealing with your average criminal or a normal person. Normal people would not commit a crime like this. You could argue possibly a normal individual, when enraged, might possibly harm another adult and accidentally kill them. But I don't know if you could argue that a normal person, even in a fit of rage, would harm children. It's hard to fathom. It's hard to say that that's a normal person. And then if the crime went down in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, with 2 victims, then it's not even an average criminal either. So we are clearly dealing with some kind of outside-the-box situation, so to pretend that everything has to fit neatly in the box and to dismiss everything that does not, that's the kind of thinking that keeps cases unsolved, like this one. So, a couple more posts here. I think what gets misunderstood is that this theory isn't proposing that Abby and Libby were out geocaching. In fact, it doesn't really involve Abby at all. Geocaching appeared at least moderately popular even in a small town like Delphi, so being identified as someone who had been geocaching in the area would not imply any involvement. I would also venture to say that many people who don't think Bridge Guy would leave any traces of himself at the trails also believe that he was extremely familiar with the trails. Another post here, geocaching was a very popular trend among people of that age group at the time. I don't know any truth to it, but it's entirely possible that that's what they were doing, at least. I also don't think there's any evidence to suggest it was involved in the case. It's an interesting and baseless possibility. Another response here, her phone was left. A smart predator would have taken this. See, another thing, though. If there was some kind of frame-up at play, if individuals lured the girls away from the bridge into a secondary location where they were harmed, and the phone implicates the first group of individuals, who did not harm them, or whatever. Maybe they were involved after the fact. Regardless, the true perpetrators that killed them, if none of their evidence is on the phone, would they place the phone back? Or if they removed the evidence that pointed to them and they left the evidence that pointed to either a patsy, like someone dressed like Ron Logan on the bridge to sidetrack the investigation, would they put that phone back so that everybody would be sidetracked with going for Bridge Guy if these girls happen to want to record a guy that looked weird on the bridge? If Bridge Guy's not involved, again, I'm not hallucinating to know whether he is or he isn't, but if he's not, and the girls did think he was creepy and they filmed him on the phone, and the true perpetrators looked at the phone and they saw that, maybe they looked at it, they were deleting, perhaps maybe there was other information implicating them, or maybe they thought there might be, even if there wasn't, so they're going through the phone. Again, there's some issue with the pinging of the phone. Perhaps it was driven all over town, perhaps not. It's unknown exactly how that all works in Delphi with the cell phone towers. But either way, even whether it was at a second location or not, if the true perpetrators are not Bridge Guy and they see Bridge Guy on the phone, would they put the phone back to again sidetrack the investigation? Now, that there's two theories that stem from that. Either this is all a concerted effort and someone dressed up as Ron Logan for this exact purpose, or it was accidental and the second group of individuals has nothing to do with Bridge Guy, and they almost got lucky that the girls captured this guy who they thought might have been creepy, and he didn't do anything to them. Maybe he made a comment, maybe he didn't, then he went on his way. And if the true perpetrators discovered this footage on the phone, would they put the phone back to implicate Bridge Guy and take attention away from themselves, as opposed to not putting the phone back? I don't know. These are just questions that any logical individual should answer, should ask. So another post here. It isn't thought that Abby and Libby were geocaching, but Kelsey German said in an interview that her and Libby had been geocaching as recently as Saturday, February 11th. Curious. So they were geocaching 2 days prior. Huh. That's curious. How can anybody say that's not curious? So they were geocaching 2 days prior to the murders. On this day, they logged a premium cache operated by the person of interest in this theory. Wow. Another coincidence. Premium caches created by premium users can only be made visible to non-subscription basic users such as Kelsey German if the premium user shares this type of cache with a non-premium user. Okay, so does this... Wow, okay. The plot's going to thicken here, because if this POI is setting them up, stalking them, whatever, the POI is a premium user, Kelsey German is not, so does that specifically mean that the POI made this particular cache visible? He targeted Kelsey German to make this cache visible to her that normally wouldn't be visible because she's not a premium member. Now, does that mean this POI is known to Kelsey German, they're friendly, whatever, geocaching, they just know each other through geocaching, and this POI has nothing to do with the murders? He just happened to give Kelsey German access to this premium geocache, which is, of course, a possibility. We don't know. But if this geocache individual does have something to do with the crime and he's setting them up, then that is very curious, mind-shocking even. Another response here, the fact that they had been geocaching as recently as 2 days before the girls went missing has always seemed odd to me. If I remember correctly, the girls asked Kelsey to take them to the trails, and Kelsey originally said no. Then Kelsey said that she felt like she had been telling Libby no a lot recently and decided to take them to the trail. In my mind, if Kelsey had just taken Libby geocaching, meaning she not only drove her but also spent time with her, I don't know why she would think 2 days later that she had not done anything with her sister lately. And that could just be another odd comment in a series of odd comments from Kelsey German that don't necessarily implicate her in any way. They are simply odd comments. Someone else posted they had also gone geocaching the previous weekend as well. So that weekend, 2 days prior, and the weekend before, they're going geocaching. So to completely dismiss a geocaching connection, that I don't know. I think that might not be smart unless these avenues have all been directly followed up. This POI has been followed up. If they actually put in the legwork to dismiss this theory definitively, then fine. We don't have that information, and so we don't know. Another post here. The problem with the geocache theory is that he would still have to have been waiting on the bridge. I was geocaching back then, and none of the groups I used had announcements that you were going to a specific cache at a specific time. You logged it when you got there. There really isn't a way to track fellow cachers in my experience, so if that was his plan, he had to have been out in the woods at the far end of the bridge and just hoping for the right victim log that they were at the cache and that they would decide to cross the bridge so he could trap them. If I remember correctly, the cache was at the trailhead. And again, what if there was more than one individual? In which case, what does that mean? Is one waiting at the cache, one waiting somewhere? Maybe there's 3 individuals, one waiting somewhere else. Again, we really don't know any of this. So another post here, we don't know if the girls were geocaching or not. What we do know is that Kelsey and Libby went geocaching in the area at least twice before, as recently as 2 days prior on the 11th. Kelsey asked Libby not to go geocaching with anyone else but her. What does that mean? Does that mean that Kelsey actually suspected that some of the other geocachers were weird, maybe? And she didn't want Libby going with Abby or someone else that was younger. She wanted to keep an eye on her sister. That doesn't prove anything anyway. It's immaterial whether Abby and Libby were going geocaching on that day or not. It makes no difference. It is possible that Bridge Guy had seen Kelsey and Abby near the bridge on those occasions, around the trails, and was hoping they'd show up on this snow day. It's not an outlandish theory. That's a good point, because if geocaching or whatever, something else, let's say they were avid hikers, whatever reason, if whatever variable had them in the area other times, it might be reasonable for a potential stalker, predator, criminal individual to think that they would show up again, especially on a nice warm snow day off from school. Another post here. It's very strange that certain forums like Web Sleuths prohibit the discussion of geocaching. Why? That's weird. Also, a cache was allegedly disbanded near the bridge right after this happened. The more people tell me not to ask or talk about something, the more suspicious I am of what they are hiding. There is also a POI in the armchair community that logged a cache the same day as Libby's sister a few months before the murder. Another post. I belong to Web Sleuths, and they don't allow posts or replies to post on their forum that are rumors. You have to cite your sources. Because they do this because websites like Web Sleuths catch a lot of flack from law enforcement for allowing theories that could distract the public away from the facts in a case and waste time and essentially take the case down the rabbit hole with them. And that's such a terrible argument, because if that rabbit hole leads to the truth, how would they know? There's a reason the case is not solved. Another post here. People tell you not to talk about it because there is no proof of anything related to it. A cache was allegedly disbanded. According to whom? Where do you get your info? Not everything is a conspiracy theory. People just want you to stop wasting their time with BS theories. And a very astute response to this. You can say the same thing about other theories as well, but no one gets as worked up about them as geocaching. And that's a good point. First of all, who is any adult to tell another adult what they can or can't waste their time with? I mean, all of these theories that do not lead to the truth are technically a waste of time. But nobody knows which one it is, so people interested in the case will discuss multiple theories. I mean, this kind of censoring and fascistic lobbying for shutting down avenues of research, I mean, again, this is why so many cases are unsolved. The truth is not afraid of investigation. So investigating theories that might be completely BS just to rule them out, it would technically not even really be a waste of time if you could definitively rule them out. I mean, if you really want the truth, again, it's not afraid of investigation. Other post. I agree with the taboo subject of geocaching. This is my main theory. Another post here, my absolute pure speculation is that geocaching might be a good way to find locations to hunt. Not necessarily use it to set up a snare, but using geocaching maps to find places that kids might be alone while looking for already existing treasures. Like, he lives in the Rust Belt and looks for semi-frequented, visited, and semi-remote geocaching locations, then just tours around and waits for the opportunity to present itself. I feel if the dude lived in or around Delphi, he would have already been identified. I keep hearing that he must be familiar with the area, but what does that even mean now? We're on the expletive internet. Anyway, nobody knows anything about this case for certain. Don't be putting on airs and acting like you're a detective. Once again, I'm just wildly speculating. I mean, and this speculation, I think it's reasonable to assume that of all of these predators out there, there's got to be at least a couple that might have had their eyes on geocaching. I mean, you have all of these serial killers and predators. They have all sorts of different hobbies. Why wouldn't geocaching be one of them? Now, again, I'm not saying that's the case in what happened to Abby and Libby. However, these geocaching coincidences need to at least be looked at least be investigated. The case is unsolved. If it was something else that was more obvious, and if it was investigated properly, the case would already be solved. Now, you could argue that it is somebody close to the family or whatever, and that they know who it is, and it's still not solved. Yes, maybe. Or maybe it's not that option, and it's another option. Another post here, there was a geocache over the bridge, along with one Libby and Kelsey previously had on the trails, I think. I do not believe that is where the girls were, though. Libby promised Kelsey they will look for it together. It was their thing, and they did it the weekend prior. Abby didn't have a phone, so she couldn't really play, so to speak. I honestly just think they were bored of winter, bored of indoors, and just wanted out for the day. You can't really rule out any reason why Bridge Guy was there, though. Did he? There's a typo here. Didn't he isn't one as a trap? Did he set a trap? Who knows, really? Bridge Guy's motives and reasoning don't seem like human thinking, so it can be any guess in the dark. Me and you wouldn't think of the things this person seems to think, so we won't ever know unless he speaks. That's an excellent point. A lot of times, so-called true crime aficionados, they try to apply their own logic, like what they would or wouldn't do in that situation. And not that it's a complete waste of time, you could do that, but to hallucinate that another individual, particularly a predator, a killer, wouldn't have a different line of reasoning, that's where it gets really silly. Is it worth looking at the caches? Probably. At this point, everything is worth it. Better than not doing anything. Is it likely? Probably not. I don't really think of even women when I think of geocaching, never mind young. To me, it's kind of an old man bramble hobby. Surely there were better ways to a victim than hoping that at the time you happen to check the trails, someone is at the cache. Really, all he seems to have needed was for anyone to go far off the trails to too secluded an area. It is maybe why he is familiar with the locations, though. Maybe. In the same way a fisher or mushroom hunter probably knows the land, too. I mean, I don't know. If he knew them through... If he knew Kelsey through geocaching, again, if he was some kind of premium user and he sent specific invites to her through the geocaching... through the geocaching app or website... That would be curious, because that would mean, and specifically if he kind of had a history of when they go, and then, okay, this is a day off from school, perhaps people would go geocaching. I don't know. Another post, always thought this had a bit of substance to it since the early days. I remember there being some odd comments on a geocache forum. The geocache under the bridge as a lure is an interesting theory. Another post, I don't personally think that's what happened, but the idea still gives me chills. I mean, it's weird to think about these things. Like, a certain slant on Murphy's Law, I mean, this goes to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and the quantum universe theory, why all that can happen will happen. So, it's kind of curious because, I mean, look at all these serial killers, I mean... You have all of them, there's different hobbies, there's different ways to lure victims. I mean, people have literally done, serial killers, sadistic people, they've literally thought of a million different ways to lure victims. So why wouldn't this be one of them? Now, whether it happened in this particular case, of course, that's open to speculation. But to say that it's an impossibility that somebody would lure a victim through geocaching, I mean, that's kind of silly. I don't know. Another post here, it's an interesting theory, but I feel like considering the fact that the girls were having an unexpected day off from school, that it's a slim chance to none that anybody could have known where there would be geocaching based on previous cache sites. Really quite a long shot. Pokemon Go had a similar setup to the geocaching thing, but that was only dangerous because predators and muggers were able to set up fake spots on the interactive maps where they would appear to be rare Pokemon that any kid would want to go catch while playing the game nearby, and that is so sick and sadistic. I mean, that's crazy. I hated that game for that reason, and my husband and I had a really good talk with our kids about net safety and why Pokemon Go was actually a risky game to play. Whatever happened to Pokemon Go? Is that still popular? I mean, that was the rage for like, I don't know, was it like 2 weeks, a month? I mean, and again, if that had happened, I mean, I actually don't even want to look up whether a serial killer snatched a victim through Pokemon Go, because that's just so disturbing to even think of. Shortly after that app came out, there was a YouTuber that was recording himself playing the game when he was suddenly jumped and robbed of his phone and stuff on camera. And that was it for my kid. They thankfully deleted the app after that because that's what I had warned them about ending up happening to other kids playing the game, and my oldest son quit playing, and fortunately his younger brothers followed suit. I'm so glad my kids take me serious about stuff like this. Other post here, I can certainly understand where you're coming from. I don't know how many geocaching sites were popular in the area. If the trails were one of the more popular geocaching sites in the area, though, which would not surprise me, then the chance could be more than slim. I think it's also safe to say, given what we know about the isolated nature of the end of the bridge, that the Delphi Trail's High Bridge cache would have been one of the most remote cache locations in the area. Back to Pokemon Go, there's a post here by JHNY4 2 years ago on the Delphi Murders subreddit. I recall the girls' family stating that the girls had found the Pokemon on the bridge months before the murder. So they were playing Pokemon Go, and they specifically found one on the bridge a few months before. Wow, that's weird. Another thread here from the Delphi Murders by Happy Joyful 3 years ago. Geocache questions. Let me start by saying that my family and I used to geocache quite a bit when our kids were younger. They would always take something with us to leave in the box, so for anyone not familiar, I will give a quick idea of how it works and then ask my questions. First, we would get online and find a place that had a cache. We would put the GPS coordinates into the Garmin. When we got to the place that the cache was, we would look until we found the waterproof container. Most cache are boxes of some type that people can leave small items in and if they want to take an item. Generally, there is also a notebook and a pencil. You are supposed to write your name, date, time, and where you are from. This way, people can see the last time the cache was found. We only used our first names. This brings me to my questions. It has been brought up on here that Libby was an avid geocacher and that there was a cache at the bridge. So does anyone know if law enforcement checked this cache after the murders? If so, does anyone know if Libby and Abby had signed it that day? I wondered if they had signed their names, if they possibly left a clue about Bridge Guy, if they had already encountered him. You know, maybe an entry in the notebook saying something like, there's a creepy guy here bugging us. I know this is probably a stretch, but it is something I've been wondering about. Yeah, I don't know if they would put that in a geocache log. Also, I guess it's possible to visit the geocache without leaving your name in the log. Especially if we're going to believe that Kelsey told Libby not to go geocaching without her. If they did visit the geocache, Libby wouldn't want Kelsey to know that she went without her, so they would intentionally not sign the log, so that when Kelsey went with Libby, there wouldn't be evidence that she had disobeyed her, so to speak. So responses here. Law enforcement removed the geocache pretty early on. I don't think they had time to access the geocache that day, but who knows, maybe they did it. Law enforcement hasn't said anything to indicate they did, though. Another response here. I heard there was 2 caches on the bridge. One was removed by the owner. The other was thrown in the woods by vandals. Large ammo. Okay. Other responses. Libby and Kelsey had been there a couple days prior. Kelsey logged the cache. It is very possible Libby was bringing Abby there to catch her up. Anna Williams said in an interview she forbade Abby from going to the bridge. I wonder if this is because she had asked relatively recently. Maybe she wanted to see the cache there to catch up with Libby. And so supposedly the POI, this anthropology professor, he's a professor at Indiana University. Indiana University Bloomington is about 120 miles south of Delphi. Curious. Continuing on here, another post. Now keep in mind this was 3 years ago this was posted. Geocaching is a huge community and a ton of kids are doing it nowadays, just like Pokemon Go. Geocache has also had a fair share of people using it for no good. But the issue is that it literally tracks everything via GPS from the person who dropped the cache to who finds it and pings it. If they were a victim of geocache gone wrong, it could easily be caught through the system of digital footprints left behind. So it feels like perhaps the only chance this would be an issue is if the girls were dropping a new cache. That would probably have been evidence, though, but it's something to consider. Another response here, we didn't always log all of our cache finds online when we were doing it, so I guess I was thinking there may not be a digital. Another response, if they had an app, it would have been auto-logged. Huh. And apparently it depends on the settings of the app as well. Other users discussing this, so it may or may not have been auto-logged. Huh. Some more posts here discussing geocaching. Is this a popular thing? I had never heard of this until someone mentioned it in the sub. I'm a 32-year-old man in Nashville, and I can say with certainty that it is not a popular thing in my demographic. Is this something young children are into? I really don't get it. You just leave something in a box, sign your name, take something from the box. Has it been confirmed that she was into this? Was this even a thing? February 2017. I'm kind of confused. A response here. Geocaching has been around for 17-ish years. So from around 2000, it's like a scavenger hunt. People of all ages do it. Most geocachers in my area are over 40 years old, but for many, it is a family activity. And another thread here, another geocache post by Just Passing By, sorry, 2 years ago. Hi guys, I'm a long-time lurker, occasional commenter. This is my first post. Sorry if this sucks. So most of us are already familiar with the geocaches on the trails, some off the trails, and we know Kelsey and Libby had gone geocaching many times, including the week before the murders. There's been numerous discussions on Bridge Guy possibly being a geocacher or the owner of a few geocaches in the area. But one thing I haven't seen is a discussion on the possibility that someone who's logged geocaches several times may be related to or friends with him. Now, hear me out. It is evident that Bridge Guy is local and had great knowledge of the trails, bridge, and surrounding area terrain. This may just be because he frequented the trails heavily while he was living or staying with family in Delphi, but there's also a good chance he might have become familiar with the area while tagging along with someone who was geocaching. This could be anyone, such as a relative, friend, significant other. Now, I've never heard law enforcement address the geocaching theory. If I'm wrong, let me know, and state if they believe he may have been a geocacher or not. Kelsey German has been the only person to bring up geocaching so far, but she has never commented on that theory either. This prompts me to believe there may have either 1, not checked the geocache logs, or 2, checked but did not follow up on anyone, or 3, followed up with mails only. They're all problematic scenarios because if Bridge Guy was simply just tagging along uninterested, or was forced to go, there would be no reason for him to sign the log, and thus incidentally dodging the police if they have looked at the logs. Although I'm not the most educated person when it comes to geocaching, I know there is a way for police to obtain the data of everyone who's ever logged a certain geocache by contacting the owner of it. I think following up on these people could possibly result in valuable information to help the investigation. Those are all excellent points, because who knows Bridge Guy? Another post here regarding the cache being removed after the murders. A response here says the owner disabled it for a few months due to police presence, but it's back up now. This was already 2 years ago, so it was only disabled for a few months, but it doesn't say which cache, so whether it was the one at the trailhead or if it was the one of possibly 2 or more at the bridge. So, another post here by Red Champers, and this one is truly mind-shocking. Also 2 years ago. I am quite certain law enforcement has researched and investigated the geocache and all other internet-based socializing associations. Law enforcement doesn't discuss these leads or avenues of investigations with the public. It is definitely an interesting avenue of investigation, and early on in the case, I think even before the girls were found, law enforcement did say something to the effect of watch what your kids do online. Then they sort of dismissed that warning as more of a general good advice statement unrelated to the case. I've often wondered if the shift in investigation, we were onto something early in the investigation, April presser comment, was going back to the girls' digital footprint, not a complete stranger attack. I feel the reset of Libby's phone so close to the murder is too coincidental. And I actually talked about that too early on in the first episodes. That's awfully convenient. I mean, that is just so awfully convenient. If Libby was interacting with somebody online, her phone had a record of it, or a text or whatever it was, some kind of record, which may or may not be retrieved from the provider, if it was text message content or whatever. Was it someone close to her that told her to reset it, or possibly even reset it for her? And they used the guise of the phone was glitching. I don't know. Continuing on the comment here, I don't doubt her phone was glitching, as her family has commented. But I also think there was something on her phone she or someone else wanted removed. Maybe it was to hide a geocache account that she was too young to have, or any other social media type account. Maybe it's a total red herring. Law enforcement was only able to get the girls' Gmails and other e-accounts subpoenaed after some legal hoop jumping. So I think law enforcement still has data to sift through before making an arrest. I don't think they need our help in this fashion. They need local knowledge type help. I have very little doubt an arrest will be made. I don't believe this case is cold. Keep in mind this post was made 2 years ago. Another response here, completely agree. I really think law enforcement missed something that the girls had used to communicate with Bridge Guy or another person who was pretending to be someone else in order to set up the meeting. There are countless means of communication, and hard resetting her phone might make some of these near impossible to track. Another response, that we were onto something early on comment has been bugging me ever since he said it. It could have been in regards to the girls' digital footprints. It could have been an early witness that law enforcement disregarded as not credible. It could have been anything, because we don't know what they were investigating early on that they dismissed. It's little statements like this that could have 1,000 different meanings that drive me crazy trying to decipher, even though I know the attempt is futile. Another response, maybe Bridge Guy was someone who knew she had done a reset on her phone, and that's why he left it there to be found. I mean, and let's use some controls here. In what percentage of cases of murdered individuals was there a hard reset of their phone shortly before their death where it wasn't related? I don't know. Another post here. Law enforcement have been quite incompetent, unfortunately, so I wouldn't put not following up on geocachers past them. I'm not really convinced they were catfish. The phone reset definitely looks suspicious in hindsight. In combination with law enforcement's watch what your kids are doing online comment. I think that catfishing was everyone's first thought until they began to process the crime scene, because that's frequently the cause of stranger on teenager homicide. Here's another really interesting post. by Love 2 Love 'em 1. If I remember correctly, there was a cache under the Mononhai Bridge that was taken down very soon after the murders. This led me to believe that law enforcement did know about the geocaching theory and made them take it down. Although it could be the other way around and the person whose cache it was took it down him or herself for reasons only known to them. However, I've always thought that the down the hill sounded more like a prompt than a command. Less, get down the hill right now, and more, hey, you want to see something cool? It's right down the hill. But we will never know. Unless and until Bridge Guy is caught and we can hear what really happened and what law enforcement did or didn't investigate when it all comes out in court. Wow, that is curious. I don't know, was that ever theorized before? This might be a first time I'm hearing this theory that down the hill was not part of any kind of abduction. And that whatever happened could have happened after that moment. Another post here. It's possible that Bridge Guy may have been following or communicating with Libby or even Kelsey through geocaching.com, but I don't think a personal link is necessary for there to be a Bridge Guy geocaching connection. And this is a great point here. Bridge Guy may have just known that there was a secluded geocaching spot on the south side of the bridge and staked it out. It seems like geocaching is more popular with teenage girls than boys, so it would be only a matter of time before a girl or girls found themselves in his trap. And another interesting post here by Gracie with a Y. I think it's possible he used geocaching to explain his presence, probably before the murders as well. His true purpose there didn't involve the game. I don't think he was some sort of serial killer either. He was evil, but not crazed. And another response to that, that may be the reason why law enforcement can't forward this case. He was there under the guise of geocaching. But because eyewitnesses didn't get a good look at his face, cannot identify him, and there's only a partial DNA sample, enough to rule out suspects but not rule in, they can't nab this guy. Wow. That is curious. And regardless of whether he was innocent or guilty, if Bridge Guy that was caught on video, if he was there geocaching, regardless if he also harmed them or not, what does that geocaching does buy him a theoretically plausible alibi. I mean, it's a nice day out. Why not go out for the geocache, especially if he was a user and he could prove it? I mean, that's pretty curious. Another interesting post here by Huli Kabuli, also 2 years ago. Either this guy was a geocacher or just a frequent user that knew where to take the girls and how to make a quick getaway. Question. Was Ron Logan away from home that day, or was it the following day when the bodies were found? I don't think he is the killer, but maybe Bridge Guy somehow knew that he wasn't home and would therefore be able to lure the girls behind his house. I think Bridge Guy had been to that area quite frequently and closely monitoring everything that went on around there. Someone had to have seen him around there previously. So frustrating. Leave your own theories, comments, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, or debunkings of any kind in the comment section. It's just another one of these very, very perplexing things that there's really nothing that can be done other than further speculation until more information is brought to light. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast. If you find it interesting, you can donate to our PayPal, help support the channel. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, share this podcast on social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get a priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. Could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. You are listening to the Delphi Murders Case Series. This is episode 23, Bias. And we're going to be taking a look at something that might be seriously hindering the investigation in many ways and people's perception of that investigation, in the hopes of course, bringing more awareness to the case and possibly getting it moving to getting it solved. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration. I mean, technically, is it a cold case yet? Because this does not look like it's going to be solved eminently unless there's some kind of movement or development, a critical development. I mean, obviously, I don't know that for sure. It's very possible. Again, law enforcement know exactly who did it, but for whatever reason, they can't do anything about it. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, find it interesting, you can help support the podcast, donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. And make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Like and share the podcast. Keep the awareness up in this case. Not just this case, but other cases as well. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcast to request. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. So you could also support Mindshock that way. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. And just continuing on, I mean, some people still have the theory that small town justice was served here in vigilante form. That certain individuals might have been so outraged that someone would kill these kids, basically, these teenagers, young kids, and they somehow knew who did it. I mean, there could be a further wrench here. There could be someone who thought someone did it, killed them, turned out to not be the case, maybe went out and killed somebody else who really did do it. The police know about it, so maybe that's why they want to cover it up, because this individual also killed someone who was innocent. But they also killed the guilty party, so, I don't know. I don't know how they would handle that, particularly if the innocent party was guilty of other severe crimes, who knows. But this is based off a post on the Delphi Murders subreddit, which was very, very interesting. It's posted by Kristen D. 1031 the other week. Confirmation bias. Could this be hampering Abby and Libby getting justice? And I thought this post was very, very interesting because it not only pertains to this Delphi case, but many other cases, and I talk about them on the Mindshock podcast all the time, various cases, the Maura Murray case, just making these stacks of cards, these houses of cards based on assumptions. But let me read this post here. Confirmation bias. Could this be hampering Abby and Libby getting justice? To be able to answer this question, we must first look at what confirmation bias is. Where do your beliefs and opinions come from? If you're like most people, you feel that your convictions are rational, logical, and impartial based on the results of years of experience and objective analysis of the information you have available. Well, certain people do that, others don't. That's where Dunning-Kruger comes in, but that's a whole nother topic. In reality, all of us are susceptible to a tricky problem known as confirmation bias. Our beliefs are often based on paying attention to the information that upholds them, while at the same time tending to ignore information that challenges them. Like, of course, the cult of authority worship. There's a lot of goofs out there that think that law enforcement are infallible or close to infallible, and that they aren't mistaken, innocent people aren't in prison, and all of these things. Understanding confirmation bias. A confirmation bias is a type of cognitive bias that involves favoring information that confirms your previously existing beliefs or biases. For example, imagine that a person holds a belief that left-handed people are more creative than right-handed people. Whenever this person encounters a person that is both left-handed and creative, they place greater importance on this evidence that supports what they already believe. This individual might even seek proof that further backs up this belief while discounting examples that don't support the idea. Confirmation biases impact how we gather information, but they also influence how we interpret and recall information. For example, people who support or oppose a particular issue will not only seek information to support it, they will also interpret news stories in a way that upholds their existing ideas. They will also remember details in a way that reinforces these attitudes. Confirmation biases in action. Consider the debate over gun control. Let's say Sally is in support of gun control. She seeks out news stories and opinion pieces that reaffirm the need for limitations on gun ownership. When she hears stories about shootings in the media, she interprets them in a way that supports her existing belief. And that, of course, presupposes that controlling legal gun owners would somehow prevent criminals, which of course all worldwide stats shows the opposite. Henry, on the other hand, is adamantly opposed to gun control. He seeks out news sources that are aligned with the position. When he comes across news stories about shootings, he interprets them in a way that supports his current point of view. These two people have very different opinions on the same subject, and their interpretations are based on their beliefs. Even if they read the same story, their bias tends to shape the way they perceive the details, further confirming their beliefs. Now, the one thing that's really, really missing from this article here is, of course, logical fallacies. Because this is a way to objectively determine what is being talked about or believed has a basis in reality or if it's fallacious. Now, obviously, there's also the logical fallacy, which, of course, just because something is a logical fallacy doesn't mean it's untrue. But it gives you objectivity, so you don't have to cling desperately to blind faith that limiting legal gun ownership would somehow impact gun crime. Again, worldwide stats, you can look at them for the past 100 years. They're pretty clear, and so that's what a faith-based presupposition is, or a circular reasoning logical fallacy, where you're assuming something is true before the fact and then using certain justifications to back that when your foundation is false. And again, cognitive biases have obviously a role to play in that. Impact of confirmation bias. In the 1960s, cognitive psychologist Peter Cathcart-Wason conducted a number of experiments known as Wason's rule discovery task. He demonstrated that people have a tendency to seek information that confirms their existing beliefs. Unfortunately, this type of bias can prevent us from looking at situations objectively. It can also influence the decisions we make and lead to poor or faulty choices. During an election season, for example, people tend to seek positive information that paints their favored candidates in a good light. They will also look for information that casts the opposing candidate in a negative light. By not seeking out objective facts, interpreting information in a way that only supports their existing beliefs, and only remembering details that uphold these beliefs, they often miss important information. These details and facts might have otherwise influenced a decision on which candidate to support, of course, presupposing that either candidate is eligible. Again, the black and white logical fallacy or false dichotomy there. Both guys, most probably, are scumbags, because what kind of people are attracted to politics? But anyway, expert observations. In his book, Research in Psychology, Methods and Design, C. James Goodwin gives an example of confirmation bias as it applies to extrasensory perception. Persons believing in extrasensory perception, ESP, will keep close track of instances when they were thinking about mom and then the phone rang and it was her. Yet they ignore the far more numerous times when A, they were thinking about mom and she didn't call, and B, they weren't thinking about mom and she did call. But how many people actually log all of it? Number one. Number two, again, this is all based on the false dichotomy logical fallacy, because ESP could be real and, of course, have absolutely nothing to do with this individual because they don't have ESP. So regardless of whether they were or weren't thinking about their mother when she called, it wouldn't be applicable in this situation, but that doesn't mean ESP is not real. Again, this is why logical fallacies are important. They also fail to recognize that if they talk to mom about it every 2 weeks, their frequency of thinking about mom will increase near the end of the 2-week interval, thereby increasing the frequency of a hit. Which is also true, however, if they do have ESP, why would they not be on a schedule with their mother? They could have ESP and still be on a phone schedule with their mother, correct? So again, this is why logical fallacies are important to understand. As Catherine A. Sanderson points out in her book, Social Psychology, confirmation bias also helps form and reconfirm stereotypes we have about people. We also ignore information that disputes our expectations. We are more likely to, and I'm just going to interject with another point here, very, very often, people are correct about something, but for the wrong reason. So this is where cognitive biases like confirmation bias and all these things, they can start to build this house of cards, not because the person is wrong along the way, but the person is accidentally correct, because they're correct, but not for the reason they think they are, which increases their false belief, and these are a lot of red herrings in a way. That's what ends up happening. Also important to keep in mind, but that's why people listen to Mindshock, because logic and reason is at the forefront here. Not assuming and hallucinating one theory is more likely to be true than another without having enough information, or hallucinating that there is enough information to make those determinations, because most of the time there is not. We also ignore information that disputes our expectations. We are more likely to remember and repeat stereotype consistent information and to forget or ignore stereotype inconsistent information, which is one way stereotypes are maintained even in the face of disconfirming evidence. If you learn that your new Canadian friend hates hockey and loves sailing, and your new Mexican friend hates spicy foods and loves rap music, you are less likely to remember this new stereotype inconsistent information. Some people would say that, I don't know about that, some people would say the opposite, because they would remember the person. Because if this Canadian hates hockey, all their other Canadian friends like hockey, they would remember, oh, that's the Canadian that doesn't like hockey, because it doesn't confirm. Again, important to keep these things in mind. Confirmation bias is not only found in our personal beliefs, it can affect our professional endeavors as well. In the book Psychology, Peter O'Gray offers this example of how confirmation bias may affect a doctor's diagnosis. Groupman points out that the confirmation bias can couple with the availability bias in producing misdiagnoses in a doctor's office. And of course, doctors are actually one of the leading causes of death. A lot of people don't know that. A doctor who has jumped to a particular hypothesis as to what disease a patient may have may then ask questions and look for evidence that tends to confirm that diagnosis while overlooking evidence that would tend to disconfirm it. Groupman suggests that medical training should include a course in inductive reasoning that would make new doctors aware of such biases. Awareness, he thinks, would lead to fewer diagnostic errors, or just basic logic. A good diagnostician will test his or her initial hypothesis by searching for evidence against the hypotheses. And how often do people want to think they're wrong? That's where the ego comes into play, which of course we have to keep in mind as well. Unfortunately, we all have confirmation bias. Even if you believe you are very open-minded and only observe the facts before coming to conclusions, it's very likely that some bias will shape your opinion in the end. It's very difficult to combat this natural tendency, unless of course you don't hallucinate the need to come to any conclusion if you can recognize that not enough information is available to come to any conclusion. So this was an article from verywellmind.com. What is confirmation bias? So this post here on the Abby and Libby subreddit posted this article and then the follow-up thoughts here. I believe it is probable that confirmation bias has definitely had an impact on this case. Perhaps when law enforcement said, "We made mistakes in the beginning," it is very revealing just this kind of situation. They may have looked in one direction because of confirmation bias and discounted evidence, or a witness statement or tip that would have sent them in one direction and instead, based on their bias, took a completely different approach. Whatever may have happened, we all know that hindsight is 20/20. I would like to think that we can all try to be better at listening to opposing views more and really hone in what others have to say regarding this case. Looking at information or other viewpoints in the case can only help better understand not only the fact that we all have confirmation bias, but that we acknowledge it and try to wade past it. Okay. Some posts here. Well, I can say the cops effed it up. Bridge guy might not be local, but knows the trails once or a few times before. What if he has gone through some kind of bad times, like a breakup in his life, saw the girls were dropped off, followed them to the end of the bridge as he had already been there and aware of the area, and has no specific intention but to follow them and decide what to do with them and creep them out, and somehow ended up killing them? Don't you think he also got hurt while trying to kill two girls? Why is it taking so long to arrest if Bridge Guy's local? How many people live there under that age group who fits killer profile? Overall, cops effed it up and made this a cold case. On top of that, they don't want to release more info. If you follow it from the beginning, cops released Bridge Guy's voice, then pic, and then video. WTF. Another post here. I think this is one of the easy cases to solve if cops handled it well. I mean, there's a lot of good points here, especially if we don't even know for certain where the video came from. The trail cams, if you haven't listened to the trail cam video podcast, just some conflicting information at the beginning. I mean, there's conflicting information every step of the way in this case, which is weird because you don't see that in every case. Sure, some cases you see that with bumbling cops, but in a lot of cases there is no conflicting information. It's simply accurate every step of the way, whether there's a lot of it or not. In some cases there's not a lot of information, but it's not conflicting, it's consistent. Another good post here. I think confirmation bias is hampering many private citizens' view of the case and evidence. This is unfortunate. It has the bad consequences of innocent people's lives disrupted or ruined, piles of tedious speculation fest, screeds on social media,
and likely aggravated mental health problems for folks who are too invested and triggered about the Delphi murders. I cannot have an opinion on whether it hinders the investigation. There aren't enough drop-dead ambiguous for 5 years facts to base an opinion on. Writing that last, I am considering if that argues the contrary, that the investigation does not suffer from too much confirmation bias and its cousin groupthink. Yeah, I mean, a lot of good points there as well. I think, yeah, just regarding the true crime community online, obviously there's individuals that point to certain individuals as being guilty and without the proper evidence. Of course, that's a huge issue in every case. But, and also naming people, doxing people. I mean, obviously, most true crime podcasts do not discuss anybody that hasn't already been named in the media, newspaper, television, whatever, by police already. So the people that are just randomly picking out people on Facebook saying, oh, that kind of looks like the guy. I mean, that's kind of an issue, yeah. But on the other hand, as long as you don't dox the individuals, opening the door, giving tips to police simultaneously, possibly to media, to newspapers, so they can make sure that leads are followed up, that's not necessarily a bad thing if it leads to cases getting solved, again, as long as nobody's privacy is outright violated. So, I don't know. Again, it's also important to state the difference between theorizing and claiming. A lot of the Dunning-Kruger crowd online, they don't understand that theorizing is not the same thing as claiming. In any case, obviously the Moore Murray case has a lot of this nonsense. I mean, there's a lot of goofs out there that have blind faith that Moore Murray even made it to the so-called accident scene. The accident scene was not staged, despite many different independent accident reconstruction experts stating that it was staged. So again, simply theorizing is not the same thing as claiming definitively. Another post here. I feel like mistakes are still happening in this case. I want to add two perspectives. One, non-killer perspective. If I have a POI, I don't want to tip and put myself in danger because I don't know what evidence cops have, and I think they can't convict him unless he confesses. Huh, that's interesting. Two, killer's perspective. After he saw cops releasing his pic, he might have, just an assumption, scared and left too far away or killed himself. Also, if he waited in fear and saw cops releasing an unmatched sketch of his face, and gotten confidence that they can't identify him as per the biased confirmation investigation that original poster mentioned above, then he might be entertained. If cops have DNA evidence, shouldn't they do profiling and do DNA sketch and find killer's age based on DNA? So I don't think there's DNA, and fingerprints either. But the spokesperson said that the forensics guys spent 4 days and gathered significant evidence. What might it be then? As mentioned in other posts, I don't think he saw the girls being dropped off from the bridge, even though if it is visible. Because if he was planning like that, he should have picked one target, then two. Of course, both girls are heroes and at least gave some evidence, but what are we messing up with them? Look at the video, the audio from a different time. Yeah, that is curious. So, okay, but maybe they do have DNA, but they're not 100% sure. If the DNA can be explained away another way, if you haven't checked out the geocaching episode, make sure you check that out. Or simply friends or family of the girls, if their DNA is maybe on their clothes, I mean, how it's difficult to claim with 100% certainty how the DNA got there. Just like if someone has a pet, they might have some of the pet's DNA or hair on their clothes, even if they don't live at the pet's house. So it's, yeah, they might have DNA, but it might not be clear-cut whether that DNA can link to a conviction. So that's another point. Or they don't have DNA. Or they do, and they, for whatever reason, perhaps they think there's more than one perpetrator if they have very good reason to believe that. The DNA only gives them one and they want all of them. I don't know. A lot of options here. Another post, someone answered a question I had about DNA and how it doesn't degrade after going through a creek and getting drenched or muddied. So unless the POS used a gun and went some distance away and there was no hands-on fight, I don't see how Libby and Abby wouldn't have his DNA on them. I also seriously doubt Leo would screw up getting DNA samples, as this was the murder of children, and by Leo, I think that's law enforcement, would be more careful in collecting the samples, and anyone tested so far, including those already locked up, would have given negative results. To me, it points to the POS not being from Delphi and being unknown to law enforcement at this time. Everyone has confirmation bias. It's the nature of the way life is. Okay, so... Well, if he used a gun, though... if he used gloves, though, would they not have his DNA? So the DNA might be on his clothes, which if he got rid of, again, then they wouldn't have it. Another great post here. Is it confirmation bias or statistics or what we are told? 2 adolescent girls were killed. Chances are it was sexual pleasure, power of nature. Thus, chances are it was a man or men. We have a voice of a man. We have law enforcement FBI presenting a video of a man saying it's the same person as the voice, and the voice being one person and this person being the perp. Although there's actually conflicting statements on that. Again, if you haven't checked out the podcast, Bridge Guy Arrested, supposedly there was some kind of sex offender arrested. Supposedly Bridge Guy or the guy in the video, but he was released, not related. Again, there's so many conflicting statements, it's kind of hard to keep track. Okay, but did they actually say it's a man? The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch, which you will see shortly, is the person responsible for the murders of these 2 little girls. We also believe this person is from Delphi currently or has previously lived there, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here. We believe this person is currently between the age range of 18 and 40, but might appear younger than his true age. We try so hard to understand how a person could do something like this to 2 children. These are just quotes from law enforcement. I just unveiled a person that we believe is responsible for the murder of these 2 little girls. When you see the video, watch the person's mannerism as they walk. Do you recognize the mannerisms as being someone that you might know? Directly addressing the perp conveniently adds pronouns to. Statistics, ? Confirmation bias, ? Someone wants to control the narrative through Bridge Guy out there, ? What are the odds we're dealing with Bridge Girl? ETA, his true age, he said, though, as well as some he's in there, but it's almost seem avoided on purpose. What does this all mean? I think they have witnesses who saw Bridge Guy and they are sure he's a man, but they didn't see his face. Another poster. Bridge Guy's legs do look feminine in some frames, but I think that was just basic law enforcement talk of being as vague as possible. So the response here, most probably yes, but I don't know if we can speak of confirmation bias when we don't have much info. Law enforcement tells us this person is responsible for the crime. But could it be a woman, a couple, or a couple of people, a whole group of people? I don't know. The fact that everybody is looking for a single man stems from what law enforcement has told us. And the same for most other presumptions, if that's what they are called. Yes, assumptions and presumptions. And of course, if we're talking psychology, we always have to keep egos in mind. Dunning-Kruger and egos. Because most people, their egos have them on such short strings that they don't even consider the possibility that they might not be understanding something, they might be wrong about something in certain ways. Everybody has their certain triggers and what they allow or not, what their egos allow or disallow them from considering. So let's look at this other post here, also on this forum, very interested, by Pupperfeet. Just a couple days ago, Carroll County has paid over $30,000 in legal fees alone to cover up evidence and mislead the public. Carroll County residents undoubtedly want to see the 2016 Flora arson and the 2017 Delphi double homicide solved. Many locals have even expressed in recent months that it is well past time for law enforcement to reveal more information related to these crimes. So how would those same residents feel if they were to learn that over $30,000 of their own tax dollars at minimum have been used to circumvent accountability and conceal evidence related to these crimes? In 2018, Carroll County E911 received several public records requests from local, state, and national media outlets for the release of 911 emergency calls made on November 21st, 2016 related to the Flora arson fire. The request was denied. Fox 59 then sued Carroll County E911 for the release of the records, and a Marion County Superior Court ruled against the county and in favor of Fox 59. The 911 calls were to be released. Despite this ruling, Carroll County E911 Director Cassie Lane defied the ruling and refused to release the court records. She claimed she was explicitly advised not to release the court records by then prosecuting attorney Robert Ives and the Indiana State Police. Why, we may wonder, would an E911 director defy a superior court ruling in which she has no direct stake or involvement? What motivation or incentive would she have to refuse to cooperate with the court's media and follow Ives and ISP directives? It couldn't have anything to do with the following, published by the Comment, February 2018. Overtime pay questioned. Scott advised a community member was concerned that lead communicator Cassie Lane made approximately $20,000 more than she was appropriated for her position in 2017. Myers said the position is considered non-exempt from overtime pay per the job description. It was decided that the matter will be discussed at the upcoming March 9th Personnel Advisory Committee meeting. Spoiler alert, if the issue was indeed discussed again, no further information was ever provided. And that, of course, was from the CarrollCountyComment.com. While the exact numbers of dollars allocated has never been made public, in spite of multiple requests made to E911 and Carroll County commissioners, it is expected that over $30,000 county dollars have been spent fighting the lawsuit alone, money that could have otherwise gone towards furthering the investigations into the murder of 6 innocent children under Carroll County's watch. I mean, this is all mind-shocking. Obviously, we went over the Flora fire in previous episodes, but yeah, that's rough. They're going to spend $30,000 to not release 911 audio, which should be a matter of public record anyway. What does the audio contain? See excerpt below, taken from one of the articles covering the lawsuit in more detail. Carroll County 911 Director Cassie Lane decided to ignore the directive from her bosses, the Carroll County Commissioners, when an audio recording of the 911 call to Carroll County Dispatch concerning the fatal fire in Flora in November 2016 was requested by Fox 59 and reporter Aisha Hasney. The fire took the lives of 4 children and was later determined to be caused by arson. Commissioners directed Lane to release the audio regarding Fox 59 and Hansey, but she did not. Lane reported she was advised by then County Prosecutor Rob Ives and the Indiana State Police that the recording was protected from the public because it was an investigatory record. Fox 59 and Hasney sought a formal opinion from the Indiana Public Access Counselor about the matter. PAC Luke Britt opined that 911 is not part of Carroll County law enforcement, and therefore the recording of the call is not protected by the law enforcement exemption in the Indiana statute. Lane, after receiving the formal opinion from the state about the matter, once again refused to relinquish the audio. That's weird. Anybody find that weird? This is also on CarrollCountyComment.com. An interesting post here by Glass Guava 886. There is something weird about that case. The whole multiple ignition points and where the fire started is unknown. Those conclusions are complete opposites. It's not like it could be said to be a mistake. The refutation came from a private fire investigator who also stated that the fire investigation wasn't up to current standards. Turns out accelerants were only found in one spot in the home, not remotely the same as multiple. Here's an article from 2020, Carroll County Comment. This is an example of the good guys. The good guys do win once in a while, he said. We stood together, all of us, Commissioner Brown. Wow, okay. What? Clearly there is something in that call that is a problem. The good guys all want it locked down. Here's an idea. Actually work it, get it resolved. So Ives retires a year early, stating that he'll only stay on if there's an arrest in Delphi or Flora. The same week, Adam Randall resigns. No reason given. Both supported the calls not being released. Why was the fire deemed not suspicious before an investigation had been completed? I mean, that's the real question here. That's the real question for all the coincidence theorists and the authority-worshipping cultists who think that law enforcement are never complicit in anything. That is weird. That's weird. Where did the multiple starting point story come from without a basis in fact, and why would that info be shared at that point? Why take months to correct it? How is the emergency call so revealing that the good guys agree it should be kept away from the public? Is it the contents or the meta or what? But most of all, for a case that gets very little attention from anyone beyond private citizens who know about it, why all the secrecy? Something is not right about that case. People mentioned the mother not cooperating and leaving town as somehow odd. Just the details here would make me take my grief elsewhere. Look at who was asking her to cooperate. Seriously? And some of the very same people were involved in the Delphi investigation. Who replaces Toby will be interesting. Continued status quo. A response here by Legitimate Step. The Good Old Boy Network is alive and well in Carroll County, and they are winning in their bid to conceal, cover, deceive, and deny the public information that should be public. It is now easier to understand why the Delphi murders have not been solved. They are deeply invested in silence. A really interesting comment here by Logan's Run. What if a fire department person was involved in both cases? Questions being here, one being bridge guy, question mark. Response here from Swanson's Love Child. I'm going to say this. I listened to True Crime Garage about the Florida fires when they talked about statistics of arsonists. They mentioned how first responders are more likely to commit arson. Fast forward to Doug Carter's 2019 press conference about Bridge Guy possibly being in the same room. Were there any first responders there? There's been some suspicion in the past about law enforcement being involved in the murders. And of course, that law enforcement officer who committed suicide as well. Wow. Stupid Eyes Me stated there's an awful lot of weirdness there for one rural Midwest county. That's a great point. Another response from Legitimate Step. A small local PD that is not used to having the eyes of the world upon them. The cover-ups are part and parcel for law enforcement that runs things their own way. And this is also reminiscent of Manitowoc County in the Stephen Avery case of making a murderer fame. And there's a lot that goes on in that Manitowoc County. Weird. And then you look at all these other counties where they don't seem to be having these problems. Weird, huh? Weird. Huh. Very weird. Another post by Legitimate Step. I am stunned to learn that someone in Carroll County didn't want the public to know the truth about the Florida fire that killed innocent children. The integrity and competence of Carroll County law enforcement is in deep question now more than ever. And why don't they want us to know anything about the Delphi murders that took the lives of Libby and Abby? Some other posts here by Wise King and Mongroloid. The fire and murders aren't connected in any way, confirmed by Carter via the Florida Fire press he did a while back. And again, these authority-worshipping cultists, oh, did he pinky swear on it? Because, again, not that he's lying, but humans can be mistaken. I don't know why so many individuals out there have a hard time with this. The mom refuses to talk to law enforcement. She's the only thing holding it up. As if this person knows. Because if it is a first responder or law enforcement is someone connected to them, obviously they would make sure this wouldn't get solved. But this Wise King goof, ironically, doesn't understand the basics of logic. He said he doesn't think it was meant to hurt the four girls in any way, which could be a ploy, but that case could be closed. They've traveled to California when she lived out there and tried to talk as she refused. Another response here. Also, she worked at a gas station, so that scene is going to be hard, as trace would be all over her shoes, clothes, etc. Yeah, that's kind of messed up. But why would she try to burn down the house with her kids in it if she just wants insurance money? That doesn't make any sense. See, here's another thing. I don't know if we talked about this. What if she was working with law enforcement or somebody in the fire department or first responder of some kind, then there was some kind of insurance scam going on, and then it just went all wrong? And so she possibly knew about the scam. Obviously, she did not want her kids to be harmed in any way. But because there was a scam in play beforehand, she was either threatened or whatever, she got out of Dodge. Would that explain it? Obviously, goofs like Wise King can't consider any of these possibilities because they just don't understand basic logical fallacies. All right, the final Mindshock we're going to go over is this still that apparently many have not seen. And it looks a little bit enhanced, but the other thing that's weird with all of these new AI enhancements and getting all this 4K high-res footage of even film from 100 years ago, it's curious because why have they not been able to enhance this further? I mean, it is kind of weird, isn't it? Like you have all of this innocuous footage that gets enhanced from decades and 100 years ago. But you have in these true crime cases, for whatever reason, they just can't apply this. So here's an image also posted. This was posted on the Delphi Murder subreddit as well. Big cat life for real. younger looking bridge guy. I hadn't seen this specific still image of the bridge guy. I see a young, approximately 25, thinner bridge guy here with brown hair, no hat, and sneakers. Yeah, those do not look like boots in this photo here. Definitely looks like it could be a younger guy with baggy clothes. Apparently, this photo was inverted somehow or processed somehow. I don't see a source here. It was posted by M. Britton on imgur.com February 3rd, 2020. So is he wearing a hat or is he not wearing a hat? So it does look like a hat. Some people are saying that he's not wearing a hat and it's blonde hair, but you can kind of see the texture there. It definitely looks like a hat to me. Obviously, it's pixelated, even though this image has been cleaned up a little bit. It's still pixelated, so it's hard to say with 100% certainty, but it does look like a hat, especially it's the same color as the background, which is another problem. That's a huge problem. And if you actually zoom out a lot, it almost looks like it could theoretically be a backwards baseball hat. Looking at it way, way, way zoomed out from far away, but probably not what it is. It does look like some kind of hunting cap or such. Some commenters here just really do not believe it's a hat. If you go with the no hat view, I see thick, straight, dirty blonde or light brown hair that grows forward on his head. It's a hair type we've all seen before, really thick, coarse, and straight, all growing in the same direction forward. Or it's a hat. I keep going back and forth. Another post here. I don't think it's a hat, but I might be wrong. It looks like there is hair whirl at the top of his head. At least that's what it looks like to me. What's curious to me is, am I seeing a mullet at the back? What is that? It is throwing me off. I used to think it was a hat with something draped down from the back of the hat and covered the neck for sun protection like some fishermen wear. Anyway, that's what I have to add about it. It also looks like it could be some kind of hoodie that he's wearing underneath, bunched up. Another poster put this. It almost looked like his jacket is being held together by a giant safety pin in the front. It just has that look to it. I'm sure it's not that, but it's odd looking. I can't put my finger on it. What is holding that jacket together? It does look kind of weird. It looks very weird. Huh. Almost looks like something's been blurred out. I mean, this could just obviously be pixelated artifacting because it looks like there's a lot of blurs all over the image, whatever they did to it. Someone posted, I would think it's not fully not zipped up fully, or it also has buttons and not all of them are buttoned. I mean, that sort of looks like it. Another poster, Sally's thigh gap. I'm also curious about his arms position. They are not identical. Is he holding a gun inside a pocket in one of his hands? The left side, as we look at the images in his jeans pocket, the other hand is a bit higher up. There seems to be some kind of brown thing. Hard to know if this is part of the jacket or not. There also seems to be something in front of his crotch that is brown too. Could be something in his pocket, like a cell phone. Regarding the hand, it's kind of hard to tell because he's walking at an angle. So if he's mid-awkward step on those, on that bridge, of course, that rickety bridge, that could account for it possibly being off-kilter. This really is the first image that looks like he could be a lot younger, though. Again, I don't know exactly what they did to this image, but he definitely looks like he could be younger. I mean, I don't know about 20s, but he doesn't necessarily look like he's in his 50s here. Huh. Although he could still be, but there's just something about the image that indicates that it's possible that this is a much younger guy. Someone posted, is this a guy that would be wearing a scarf? I don't see why not. The weather allows it to not be suspicious. He can use it to hide his face. Supposedly, one of the witnesses said something like this. that it was a scarf. Huh. Okay. So some people have processed these images, so they've adjusted the contrast on his face and his head to see if it would look like, to determine for sure what kind of hat, if it was a hat versus hair. Still kind of hard to tell, but it just does not look, I don't see all of the, hair would just have more distinguishing features for all the different strands. So it just seems like it's much more likely it's a hat just from the way that it looks like to me. Apparently this is a reversed image, and that's why it looks this way. It's just reversed. So it's not manipulated in any other way other than reversing or inverting the image, but it sure makes it look different, doesn't it? Weird. Regarding the voice, though, people are obviously saying the voice sounds a lot older, but there's a response here by Tobor. There's just so much grittiness to it. There's maybe a handful of people I've ever came to know in my life that had a voice like that in their 20s. Late 30s with a lot of smoking more common. 40s and 50s is the age range where you wouldn't question it. It's not impossible that the voice is of someone younger. It's just that if it is, the person has a distinctly older sounding voice, and it would be that much harder to identify them. I.e., he stands out in the mind of many for being unique in that way. So what do you guys make of this? Inverted, reversed image. Definitely looks like he could possibly be younger, but again, it's so pixelated it's hard to tell. But zooming way out is curious. Zooming out just to see the way your brain kind of discerns the features without having it up close and pixelated, that's curious. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that at this point. What does everybody else think about this reversed image and zooming out on it? What can you tell from it? But again, anything helps. Keeping the awareness up in this case as well as other cases. Awareness is what gets cases solved, not doing nothing and just pretending it'll be solved if it's not gonna be. Pressure and awareness is key. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast in the Delphi case series. If you enjoy the podcast and the series, you can donate to our PayPal, help support the channel. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like and share this podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Comments, questions, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire, signing off. Catch you guys next time. If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. You are listening to the Delphi Murders Case Series. This is episode 24, Catfish. And we're examining the new information released in these updates in the case, which it's about time there was some kind of an update. And more importantly, is this just law enforcement making it look like this is not a cold case, or making it look like there's more investigation than there is? Or are they diverting attention into a lead that they know is false so they can concentrate on other leads while distracting all the YouTubers and web sleuths by throwing them this bone that they know will not be fruitful? A lot of options on the table, and of course this is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure, and we don't commit logical fallacies here. So objectivity is key, logic and reason is key. We will examine the new information and whether or not the individual link to the catfish could possibly be involved in the murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams, either being the perpetrator himself or somehow affiliated with the true perpetrators. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, find it interesting, feel free to donate to our PayPal, help to support the channel, help us get more mind-shocking content out there, and keep awareness up, not just in this case, but in other true crime cases, missing persons, and such. Awareness is what gets cases solved. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock to check out the latest updates. Like and share this podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, first things first, let's look at The Sun. Reported this: hunt for killer. This is December 8th, 2021. 7 mysteries in Delphi murders, including how catfish was probed days after teens found dead on Valentine's Day. Mystery continues to surround the so-called Delphi Snapchat murders, nearly 5 years on from the killings of 2 teenage girls in Indiana who were found dead near a train track back in 2017. Bodies of Abby Williams, 13, her best friend Libby German, 14, were discovered near a river a short distance away from Monon Bridge Trail in Delphi, February 14th, 2017. They were reported missing a day earlier, shortly after Libby posted a final image to Snapchat of Abby showing her traversing the tracks of the bridge trail. Few updates have also been shared by police in more than 4 years since. Cause of deaths unclear. The girls' causes of death have never been disclosed, and their killer has never been found. Now, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of criticism of how law enforcement handled this. And there's a lot of problems with this, obviously, but some people allege that even the Snapchat photo was not taken day of. Some people allege that the entire reported timeline, it has an issue with it. Because is it possible the girls weren't even there at the time alleged? Again, I wasn't there, so I don't know. I'm not going to hallucinate and pretend I know anything for sure like some of these other goofs on true crime channels do, or even official reporters and investigators. If it's not definitively proven, it is not definitively proven. You can pretend it's a fact, but that's not going to make it so. The truth is whatever it is. So how suspicious is it that they didn't even release a cause of death? Now, in some cases, cause of death is not released. That's not the most unusual thing ever, but we have to look. I mean, this many years on, I mean, it's definitely time for more information. Indiana State Police previously said that autopsies were carried out on the 2 girls, but officials declined to disclose a cause of or time of death for either girl and refused to confirm whether DNA evidence was recovered from the scene. Also strange. Sergeant Jerry Holman told Annie True Crime back in February that it's standard practice for his investigators to remain mum on such key details during ongoing investigations, particularly those that are considered high profile. But again, if you compare it to other cases, there's not this level of silence and obfuscation. Speaking on behalf of state police, we don't ever release information about ongoing investigations, Holman said. In this case, we gave out audio and photo evidence from, you know what's strange? From video, but this article put in brackets German's video, as if that's their interpretation of what he's saying. Supposedly verbatim would be, we gave out audio and photo evidence from video to help locate. Okay, so he didn't state which video. We do that so we can get key evidence. Only the killer or killers know the cause of death. We don't release it to the media because then everyone and their brother would know, and it's common to get false confessions from mentally disturbed people. So we're trying to keep the details close to our vests. But you know what? What does that have to do with saying that, confirming whether there was or wasn't DNA recovered at the scene? Because that wouldn't tell anybody whose DNA. I mean, it's kind of weird. Law enforcement's relative radio silence over the probe has permitted a swell of speculation to mount online, something Holman acknowledged. There's a lot of false information out there, he conceded. Social media, although not new, does impede our investigation. Like when people put up side-by-side photos of innocent people, or at least people with no ties to the state of Indiana or Delphi, which creates false information. People believe it, though, because it's on the internet. I mean, as opposed to the idiot box, I mean, what's he trying to say here? Some armchair detectives have even gone as far as attempting to reconstruct the murders in elaborate YouTube videos. The videos help us know that people don't know the true details because the facts haven't been released, Holman said. People watch the news and think they are picking up on things, but it's false. Nothing out there is accurate, which only leads to more false tips. So nothing is accurate, including what law enforcement has said? Curious. Key clip and audio. One potential key piece of evidence in the case was released by police within days of the killing, showing 2 grainy photos of a hat-wearing suspect walking on the abandoned railroad bridge the girls had visited. They also released an audio recording of a man believed to be the suspect instructing the girls to go down the hill. Again, is this a presupposition? Because how do we know when the audio exactly was taken or in what context? Because like he said, there's very, very few details released, and if he's saying nothing out there is accurate, is that including statements from law enforcement? The audio was part of a video file taken from Liberty's cell phone shortly before her death. Liberty has previously been heralded a hero by investigators for quick-thinking actions, with cops citing the recording to be a key shred of evidence. That young lady's a hero, that is no doubt, Indiana State Police Sergeant Tony Slocum said at the time. To have enough presence of mind to activate the video system on her cell phone to record what we believe is criminal behavior about to occur, there's no doubt in our mind that she is a hero. The full video was released by police 2 years later, although still it garnered no concrete leads. The full video? Now, is this just the way the Sun writer phrased this? Because it's kind of weird. Detectives are hoping the audio will help them match the man's voice to a suspect once one has been identified. Killer in the room. More than 2 years after the audio clip was released, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter held a press conference to unveil a new composite sketch of the suspected killer. During the press conference, Carter said police believe the killer has local ties and shockingly claimed that the killer could even be sat in the room with them. Directly to the killer, who may be in this room, we believe you're hiding in plain sight, Carter said. We've likely interviewed you or someone close to you. Carter added that investigators believe the suspect was between 18 and 40 years old, but likely looks much younger than his age. We also believe this person is from Delphi, currently or has previously lived here, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here, Carter said. He did not take answers during or after the press conference. However, his remarks at the time seemed to indicate that cops believed they were close to zeroing in on the suspect. We are confident you have told someone what you have done, or at the very least, they know because of how different you are since the murders, he said. Convicted pedophile linked James Brian Chadwell, who pleaded guilty to abducting, beating, and molesting a 9-year-old girl in April, was identified as a potential suspect earlier this year. And of course, check out the Mindshock episode on him. Chadwell of Lafayette was investigated in connection to the crime shortly after his arrest. The information has obviously been shared with us, and our investigators are looking into him, County Sheriff Toby Lazenby said of Chadwell's case. He did not elaborate on any details about the investigation into Chadwell. No updates have been issued since. Chadwell is not the first person accused of an abduction crime who has been investigated as a person of interest in the Delphi murders. None of the other people of interest turned out to be a suspect. Lazenby later announced they were imposing a media blackout on possible suspects in the killings of Libby and Abby moving forward.
or until now. Male model catfish. A rare development in the case was shared by cops earlier this week when they announced they were hunting for the creator of a bogus social media profile that was grooming underage girls and attempting to meet up with them. The profile, called Anthony_Shots, was active between 2016 and 2017 across a number of social media platforms, including Instagram and Snapchat, police said. The bogus account used images of a known male model and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and owning multiple sports cars. In a news release, the Indiana State Police said the creator of the profile used their contrived opulence while communicating with underage girls to solicit nude images, obtain their addresses, and attempt to meet them. The identity of the male model used by the account in its profile pictures is known by investigators, and they are not considered a person of interest in this case. The model's images were reportedly used without their knowledge or consent. Tuesday afternoon, Keegan Anthony Klein, 27, was identified as the man behind the account. Klein, who is currently in police custody, was charged in August 2020 with 30 felonies, including child exploitation, possession of child pornography, obstruction of justice, and synthetic identity deception. That's definitely a new crime. Police documents seen by The Sun, which are heavily redacted, do not make any mention of the Delphi case, but do link him to the Anthony Shots social media account. The charges stem from a search of his Peru, Indiana home on February 25, 2017, just 11 days after the bodies of Liberty and Abigail were found. Klein reportedly admitted to police that he'd used the bogus accounts to talk to underage girls, contacting both people he knew and didn't know. He told police he would find girls on Instagram and then asked them to talk to him on Snapchat. According to Klein, he exchanged messages with more than a dozen underage girls and received pictures from them. Klein said he had about 100 pictures from underage girls that were sexual in nature, in addition to about 20 sexually explicit videos. Police did not elaborate as to specifically why police believe the account may be tied to the murders of Abby and Liberty. It's unclear whether police believe the two girls met with the creator of the account. It's unclear now whether Klein is being investigated as a suspect in the case. Sister's pledge. As her family grew frustrated with the lack of developments in the case, Liberty's older sister, Kelsey German, revealed February 2020 that she is studying forensic science in the hope of one day helping to solve who killed her sister. I run through that day every day, trying to find out if there is something I could have done differently, Kelsey said. The bereaved older sister said she has also listened to the audio clip captured by Liberty about 1 million times. I think the voice is just so familiar to all of us, she said. After we heard that he was local, it became more of an idea that I might have talked to him. Maybe I met him at a Dairy Queen or the gas station. While the suspect remains at large, Kelsey said at the time that she was confident in law enforcement's ability to achieve justice for Liberty. After I started my forensic science classes, I understood more of why we don't have all the answers, Kelsey said. Everybody sees a person differently. If I were to tell you the person I was sitting next to on the bus on the way here, I would probably tell you their nose was smaller and their eyes were blue. But I couldn't tell you much more than that. I think the best bet is to keep watching the video and listening to the audio. I don't want this person to do this again, and if he has, I hope that I'm able to help that family and be a part of their lives eventually, Kelsey said. Catching this guy is my main goal in life right now. Another article here from The Sun. Cop exposes creep. My photos were stolen by catfish being probed over Delphi Snapchat murders, and now I'm helping the investigation. A model turned cop whose pictures were stolen by a catfish social media account recently linked to the Delphi Snapchat murders is assisting with the investigation into the unsolved case, The Sun can reveal. The 29-year-old, whose name is being withheld by The Sun, said in an exclusive statement that he is in direct contact with Indiana State Police and is helping in any way that I can with their investigation. The former fashion model, a father of two, is a patrol officer for the Ketchikan Police Department in Alaska. In his brief statement, he said he's been directed by superiors not to answer any questions about the case as of right now. The cop unwittingly found himself at the center of an update in the 2017 murders of Abby Williams, 13, and her best friend, Liberty German, 14. On Monday, following a press release from Indiana State Police, in the release, the department said it was seeking information about a bogus social media account called Anthony Shots that detectives believe may be tied to the case. Skipping through here, the model was seemingly aware that his images had previously been the subject of catfishing. In a post uploaded to Instagram 111 weeks ago, the man wrote, PSA, if you think you have added me on Facebook, you don't. I don't accept people I don't know. Secondly, I'm not on any other dating sites, Snapchat, Kik, or any other social media service besides Twitter and Instagram. If you think you have been talking to me through DMs, you aren't. You are talking to a fake. Thanks. In an earlier post shared March 2018, he wrote, "Lately, I've been receiving hundreds of DMs asking if I'm talking to people on Tinder, Badoo, Snapchat, Facebook, and my answer is simply no. At this point," he later added, "if you get catfished, you probably deserve it. Do your research and be smart. These are my only social media accounts. I am not on any dating websites." Reacting to the development of the case, Abby's grandfather, Eric Erkson, told the Sun that he was thankful for the potential breakthrough in the probe. "I'm thankful for the news release because it proves that law enforcement are still working," he said. "That's all we can ask. And as difficult as it all is, we just have to leave them to it and let them do their jobs. Anyone who tried to meet with or communicated with the Anthony Schatz profile has been told to contact state police immediately. Police did not elaborate as to specifically why police believe the account may be tied to the murders of 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German back in February 2017. It's unclear whether police believe the two girls met with the creator of the account." So here's the actual Indiana State Police update. So this was a bulletin December 6th, 9:32 p.m. Detectives with the Delphi investigation seek information. While investigating the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, detectives with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, Indiana State Police, have uncovered an online profile named Anthony Schatz. This profile was being used from 2016 to 2017, but not limited to Snapchat and Instagram. And I already went over all of this. Okay. The male that is in the photos is not a person of interest in the investigation. Detectives are seeking information about the person who created the Anthony Schatz profile. And so apparently, since then, he has been identified as Keegan Anthony Klein. So these are in the court documents. So they were not in the release. These are in the court documents obtained by various news agencies. So there's more information on WDRB.com here in their December 7th article, updated just a few hours ago here on December 8th. So Klein, wow. So in the days after the murders, during that search, Klein was questioned about his online activities. According to the probable cause affidavit, Klein initially denied creating fake social media accounts and talking to underage girls, but later admitted to doing so, specifically to creating the Anthony Schatz account about 6 months earlier. Keegan stated he talked to girls he knows personally and girls he doesn't know personally, the affidavit states. Keegan stated he meets girls on Instagram. He said he knows the age of the girls he communicates with because he talks to them. Keegan stated if a girl told him she was 16 or under, he wouldn't care and would still talk to them. According to the court documents, he said he would initiate the conversations on Instagram, then move them to Snapchat. Police say he admitted to speaking to about 15 underage girls and getting images from every one of them. According to the affidavit, he told investigators that the girls' ages ranged from 15 to 17, and he probably received 100 sexual images from the girls. As a result of the investigation, Klein was charged with 1 count of child solicitation, 1 count of child exploitation, 2 counts child exploitation, possession of child pornography, 1 count of synthetic identity deception, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. He remains in custody on those charges. It is important to note that Klein is not in any way charged in connection with the murders of Williams or German at this time. It is not clear if investigators in the murder case have spoken with Klein. Alright, so let's see here. Does Klein really look like Bridge Guy? I don't know. Supposedly he's a much heavier individual. So how much lighter could he have been in 2017? I mean, I don't know. Seems unlikely, and seems unlikely he would be navigating that bridge either. I mean, I don't know. As far as the younger guy, do people believe that the younger guy is the fake profile? Because these are the rumors that were out initially. And all the coincidence theorists, the authority-worshipping cultists that all shut down rumors, they all thought the catfish idea was fake. Clearly, the police are interested in it. So whether it was true or not, what happened or not, it really exposes the silliness of the goofs that shut down the theory outright. That's why we don't fall for any kind of logical fallacies here on Mindshock, because we don't do that. Unless you were there, you know what happened, and you don't know. That's the whole point. That's why the case is unsolved. So it's really, really, really weird how there's still people out there that just fall for all these logical fallacies, pretending and hallucinating that they know what is or isn't likely, or what they think is true or not true has any kind of merit if they don't actually know what happened. So, what do we think of this Anthony Shots profile? Is this just a case of police throwing a bone that they know is going in the wrong direction to distract everybody because online activity is so rampant in this case? Or is it possible there really is some kind of merit to the Anthony Shots profile being involved? Now, would this involve be a ring of individuals? Like a whole bunch of these scumbags, and maybe one of them is younger, and he's the one that met them on the bridge? I mean, how many individuals are there? I mean, and this all goes back to the timeline. We do not have a verified timeline by any stretch of the imagination. It's just very difficult to put any of this together if we don't know if they were taken to another location. Okay, so let's go through the Delphi murders subreddit again, see what kind of info people are coming up with, see what we can make sense of. So supposedly, the fake Anthony Shots Instagram account was following Liberty German's account in 2017. I don't know how people check this, but supposedly they're still following the account. Here's a post from Quizzical Cat. His fake IG account was following Libby's in 2017 and apparently still does. Since law enforcement knew this guy was behind the Anthony Shots account, I'm thinking that when he was served with the search warrant February 2017, they likely knew he was one of Libby's followers. So Quizzical Cat actually... Wow! She posted a screenshot Instagram December 26, 2016, and Anthony Shots apparently liked it and requested to follow her. Huh, if that's not a fake, that's very interesting. So supposedly he liked several other of her images. So this is quite damning. And law enforcement knew this right away, which is curious on the timing of this new release. Quite curious. Further speculation by Quizzical Cat here. Law enforcement seized Klein's devices late February 2017, and since law enforcement knew at the time that he was behind the Anthony Shots profile, it's likely that he never used the profile after that. So it would seem that he was following Libby's Instagram and liking her pics before the murders. Klein told law enforcement he would communicate with girls on Instagram, then suggest moving conversations to Snapchat. Maybe law enforcement found a message from this guy to Libby on Instagram, figured out it was a fake profile, linked it to Klein, and that's what led to the search warrant at his place in Peru in late February. It's always been said that the Peru search warrant was related to the Delphi case, but no specifics were ever given. I don't know if this guy is Bridge Guy. He seems too big, and people who knew him have said that while he's bigger now, he was still pretty big in 2017. And is this the guy that was arrested? When you're talking about Bridge Guy being arrested, obviously the phrasing of that is curious, but I went over that a couple different times because there's a lot of people who just don't do good with English. But Bridge Guy was supposedly arrested. Now, what are they referring to, Bridge Guy? Are they referring to alleged? I mean, I don't know how, again, that was all phrased quite bizarrely, as is all the conflicting info from law enforcement. If this is Bridge Guy, and he was on the bridge, but he didn't kill them, what does that mean? So, Kelsey also confirmed that they knew about this guy for a long time. This is on Facebook. They're talking about Anthony Shots, and Kelsey German said they've known for a while. Here is an optimistic post from Pupperfeet. I suspect state police took over the investigation back in September when they moved the investigation to a new building within Delphi. Since then, they've obviously had a major break. I believe they already have a suspect and an arrest is imminent. I also suspect they have him under surveillance, or else they wouldn't have posted something so inflammatory and risk flight or suicide. I think they are instead appealing to the public in order to bolster their case, to see how many others have been groomed or how many other attempts to lure have been made to show a more aggravated serial type of offending, which will make for a much stronger case in court and will protect them against getting in a stuck scenario where murder is the only charge. This way, they can at least fall back on serial grooming, exploitation of minors, etc., if they can't get murder to stick for whatever reason. Because let's be real, ISP and the FBI don't need the public's help tracking down and identifying whoever created this account. They could do that in their sleep. I think they just want to know who else has been in contact with him. I feel very hopeful. And that's a great point. That's a great point, because this release, again, there's a lot more than meets the eye here. This doesn't quite pass the sniff test in terms of taking this release at face value. Now, if this does involve a ring of individuals, what does that mean? And they want to get everybody. So here is the wrinkle we were looking for. There's a Carroll County Comment article, front page, 5 years and no answers. November 24th, 2021, recently. So this article is talking about the silence from local investigators, also talked about the Flora fire. It basically just talks about, okay, wow. Interesting. So in this article, it says, now it has come to light that at least one or more FBI field agents who were present at the beginning of the double homicide investigation is being investigated himself for official misconduct because he knew of sexual misconduct allegations against the U.S. Olympics gymnast doctor for at least 8 months and said nothing, then allegedly lied about it during the investigation. Thank you, Indy Star. This cannot be good news for Carroll County. We believe, as do many community members, this silence must stop. Someone has to draw a line in the sand about what is valuable to the investigation and what is nothing more than refusing to acknowledge these cases should be considered cold cases. This article really held their feet to the fire, talking about the silence and all of this, like all the tips, and then just nothing from law enforcement. So some are alleging that this article, front page of the local newspaper, Carroll County Comment, that made them release the new information recently. And is this connected to this FBI agent or agents? Because if they're part of this ring, again, a lot of these coincidence theorists, authority-worshipping cultists with Stockholm Syndrome, they think nobody in official capacity is ever involved in anything, in any of these illicit activities, downright criminal activities. If there are FBI agents involved, I mean, that's really shady. I mean, that's very, very shady, especially if these are the agents investigating the Delphi murders, especially right at the beginning. So there's a post here from Argyle. I won't get my hopes high. In my opinion, this is just law enforcement's reaction to the latest and very critical newspaper article. I really do hope that I'm wrong. And that makes sense, because this is a highly critical argument. It's not just people arguing online. This is on the front page of the local newspaper. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. Another post here from Infinite Ad 9519. I've always thought the girls were catfished. I think Libby clued in that the person they were meeting wasn't matching up to who they met online, and she pulled out her phone because she had a gut feeling something strange was going on. Phone was scrubbed clean the week before. Possible that they had made plans to meet up at that point and were told to erase info from the phone. It's an unusual location to be hanging out, very secluded. Also, the bridge is scary AF. You don't one day say, hey, let's go for a walk on that scary AF bridge and take some pics. Our parents won't mind. Hell yeah, they would mind. I'm a mom of 2 teens, and I'd be one to say don't go near the bridge ever. Something happened. I think they gave nudes to this guy. It's been said that Libby was injured more than Abby. Could be that he was pissed about something she had done. Maybe she had threatened to go to police and rat him out. I think Abby was just there to make sure Libby would be safe rather than her going alone. They were lured there. That's my gut feeling. I hope this is it and they catch the person responsible for murdering 2 girls. Another thread here. This one is by Mr. Free with a Y. Let's use common sense. I'm no detective, but I am a web sleuth, and let's use common sense here. Do you really think that law enforcement would put this Anthony Shots username in the public sphere without first executing a search warrant on every account associated with the name catfish character? Especially considering they have likely had this profile in their sights for a while. Let's look at the info that law enforcement is requesting. When and how you communicated with Anthony Shots. They would already have this information, especially if it was illegal behavior. They would especially know if anyone exchanged contact information with him. The exception possibly being a burner number that is impossible to trace. If he used a burner cell or something like that, the odds that the person that communicated with him retained that conversation for 5 years is astronomical. Even if it did, if it doesn't contain anything illegal, what is the value of obtaining this? 2. What social media apps were used? More useless information. Keep in mind that this is a murder suspect in one of the highest profile cases in the country. They have likely swept every social media app in existence for this catfish profile. 3. If Anthony Shots attempted to meet you or get your address. This is the only thing that may actually involve a crime or information that law enforcement may not already have. But even if that's the case, why would it be connected to the Abby and Libby case? Actually, why would any of this be connected to the Delphi murders? There is something else behind their decision to release this, and I have already told my theory on what it is. I'm just curious if anyone else can figure it out. Glass Guava responded with 2 scenarios come to mind. One, it's a recent tip via intel, well after they could engage directly. The second is that it's been known, and tracing him through tech avenues hasn't been as successful as they needed it to be, and connecting him to the profile needs an in-real-life context. Both scenarios would surely play out against already having traced and fully exploited all of the accounts and profiles connected to Anthony Shots. Disconnecting an account should raise red flags. I think that's a given. I think Original Poster is making tracing a digital footprint sound a little too simplistic. I think it's about flushing him out. Whether they know who he is or not, they need an in-real-life connection, and that can be interacting with someone or other ways of looking at how the profiles interacted. That, or they need online movement. So again, this was posted 2 days ago, so I guess this was before the release of his name, so now they have his name, so it makes it all that much stranger because they've had his name since the beginning. So what does that mean? So here's another poster making an excellent point, Jasmine Desu. I think they have the Anthony Shots account used, but who's to say there aren't 4 more profiles out there that have a similar name, but the same pictures and BS stories? That's usually how serial catfishers work. I think they have the account they need. I think they think this guy has more profiles out there and they need help finding out. They can try their best to find them all, but it's impossible without public help, it looks like. I think they are hoping someone comes forward with a new account he used and is hoping he slips up there maybe. Or lastly, he could burn the account super quickly. Maybe he's done this before, but deletes his account every time. A response to this by Mr. Free, of course, they would have gotten warrants for all of them by now. This is a very high-profile murder investigation. Any profile with that name and catfish image would be ripped apart by law enforcement. Hell, even a deleted account would be ripped apart. Here's a couple interesting posts here. I think they are playing games again. The profiles are out there, so he can't log into them now and delete them. Maybe they also want some insurance if they are about to charge him and don't have much physical evidence or belief in their case. Response here, they could be baiting him to do exactly this, to log into old accounts to try and delete them in order to get his IP address. I mean, you'd think they already have all of this, though. It's weird. Okay, so a couple more things here. So obviously, you can't, especially, I mean, okay, you want to say in the early days of the internet, were things on the internet in the early 2000s? Is it possible that some of that information has been scrubbed? Now, once you get into probably even post-2012, post-2015, it seems like everything is backed up, archived many times over, even deleted. So there would be servers out there with all deleted information. You would think the FBI has access to all of this. So it's kind of difficult to think that they don't already have all this information. So here's another interesting post by Joe 5555. I think the following theory is what happened. and I'd be willing to make a bet on it. Also, I have loosely followed the case since the beginning, so forgive me if I get a minor detail wrong. This is by no means at all trying to paint either of these girls in any kind of negative light. I'll start off by stating the obvious. Libby was catfished. She was originally contacted by Klein for indecent photos which she sent to him. Klein is not the killer, and he almost certainly has no clue the killer's true identity. This is my reasoning and how I'm pretty damn certain it went down. Libby was contacted out of the blue on Instagram by Klein's account. They hit it off and she became infatuated with him. Klein's entire motive and goal was to get indecent photos of her. He eventually succeeded. I firmly believe Klein was part of an anonymous internet pedo community where members would share and chat through text incriminating photos of minors. Members of online communities, especially small and private communities, will have an overwhelming sense of camaraderie amongst their members. I was part of a website called what.cd, a private music touring website that was shut down. You would not believe how many members would go above and beyond for each other purely pro bono. I digress. Klein and the true killer were part of a community. Klein uploaded Abby's pictures, probably along with the poor other girl's pictures too, along with probably a general location, Indiana. People get off knowing where the girls are from. See 4chan.org for threads like this, or probably even Reddit. Anyway, for whatever reason, Bridge Guy took interest in Libby. Maybe close location, or who knows why. He wanted to contact Libby himself. Now here's where a lot of you guys are getting confused about catfish accounts. Yes, they're incredibly easy to make, but the amount of background work and social engineering required to set up a relationship with someone is incredibly tedious. Not only that, but let's say you're in the person who's getting catfished shoes. An extremely attractive member of the opposite sex contacts you out of the blue, you guys hit it off. What are the chances, right? Unbelievably low, but to the person who's getting catfished, it's not impossible. Now let's say two members of the opposite sex want a relationship with you. Now that's impossible. This is why Klein's Instagram account was so valuable. It has an invaluable relationship with Libby. Not only that, but it has leverage. So my guess would be Klein gave the account to the killer under the guise that he would try and solicit more nudes. That's when things take an even more terrible turn. This is when I'm pretty hard speculating, but here's what I think. Bridge Guy probably uses blackmail, i.e., threatens to show Libby's parents, etc., the pictures unless they meet up. She knows she's in trouble. As a kid, what are you supposed to do? Let your parents, teachers, friends find out and see your photos. She tells Abby about this, and they agree to meet Bridge Guy, but first, they erase Libby's phone. Either because they were instructed by Bridge Guy to do so beforehand, or because Libby doesn't want to get caught with her convos, pictures, etc. At this time, I still believe that Libby and Abby think it's actually the guy. They are sketched out, but willing to do one meetup with him under the guise of a friendly talk between him and Libby in exchange that he would leave her alone and delete the photos. Obviously, we know it ends sadly. Now, this is what Klein is thinking. He sees the news break and immediately knows that the person he gave the photos to is the killer. But what are you going to do in his situation? You can't go to the cops, etc. Plus, you yourself are a piece of expletive with terribly screwed morals. The thing that really made me think is once he was investigated, he admitted to all CO charges. Not only that, but his reaction to the interview, I'm expletive, is pretty damning of being an accomplice, but not the actual killer. He feels hopeless because his actions led to the deaths of two girls, yet he doesn't know who the killer is to save himself with a plea deal or leverage. Wow. And that could explain quite a few things, would it not? Once again, an astute Redditor posts a theory. I mean, it kind of covers most of the bases. It really does. Now the question is if the killer is also a geocacher, and that's how he knew one of the Germans' accounts, or Kelsey Germans, whoever had that account, he might have also been semi-stalking them through that. And then if he also knows this Klein guy, and he's also part of these communities, I mean, it's all very, very shady. It's as shady as it gets. I mean, this is all really, really shady with online activity, catfishing, and people selling accounts to killers or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Another poster posted this compelling theory. It would go something like this: 1. Klein catfishes Libby for pictures. 2. He shares them with a fellow pedophile bridge guy. 3. Fellow pedophile bridge guy states he likes them, and Klein states he can get whatever he wants with his social media. 4. Bridge guy buys or trades for access to the account and sets up a meeting with the girls, or possibly the Anthony Shots profile introduces bridge guy's catfishing profile to the girls as a trusted friend. 5. Police are tipped off about Klein and find some loose connection between him and the girls. Maybe he follows them or has liked the picture, but nothing concrete. 6. All of the directly incriminating evidence takes place on Kik or Snapchat and has successfully been wiped. Police seize all of his devices going back years, except for some reason they can't find his current device. Then he wipes his current device before turning it in. Police focus on Klein, but he has an airtight alibi. He was in another state or something. 8, with him eliminated and no direct proof, they move on and he gets put on the back burner as just another pedophile. 9, we have seen that Klein is willing to talk to the police, even if he is likely lying about a bunch of stuff. Maybe he volunteered in the last year that he allowed other people access to the account and he created this new inquiry. Okay, I mean, that is an excellent theory. That is a very excellent theory. And of course, the timing of information released by the ISP, I mean, that's still curious as well. Another interesting post here by STFU Voices in My Head. My personal opinion, Klein has been working with law enforcement since 2017 when his home was searched. He remained free because he acted as an informant. The new 2020 charge that someone pointed out might be what compelled law enforcement to arrest him after all this time. Personally, I don't see any reason he would be free for under 3 years unless he was working with law enforcement. I really don't think he is Bridge Guy, but I think he has some connection to Bridge Guy through the Anthony Shots account. He probably doesn't know who Bridge Guy is, but maybe he is coughing up more info since a hearing is coming up. That's okay. So apparently there's a hearing on the 16th, a pretrial conference. Okay. Another poster posted this. I think the new warrant came out because he reached the end of his usefulness as a CI for whatever reason. It was time to move forward with his formal charging at that point. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this makes sense. And if you're him, I mean, see, there's a lot of different types of scumbags. And they all have different lines in the sand and different moralities. There's plenty of scumbags who would just never really condone physically hurting anybody. So, yeah, there are those types of scumbags. Then there's other types of scumbags that, of course, would murder anybody, whatever. And then there are the ones in between that maybe would do random assaults, but they draw the line at murder. I mean, there's so many different types of scumbags, so obviously it doesn't automatically make one a murderer because they're engaged in all this online fraud, child solicitation, and all of this just incredibly despicable and illegal behavior, but that doesn't make them a murderer per se. So this Klein individual, it seems like it might be more likely that there was some kind of an account sharing. And there was, so I mean, that seems to be able to explain a lot of this. Here's a post from February 26th, 2017 on Facebook. Okay, I'm weirded out. This is probably just a sign that I'm paying too much attention to this case, but I went to Liberty's Instagram yesterday, noticed that a really strikingly attractive teenager had liked a couple of her posts. I back-searched his profile photo, and it was of an old photo of a male model, not a real person, as he was claiming to be, but he had claimed to have just moved to Lafayette. His profile was private and a typical phishing profile, but he only had like 50 followers. Today, the likes from him are gone, and either his name has changed or he's deleted his profile. I'm sure the FBI has already read all of their social networking interactions, but I just really wish I had saved his profile name or emailed it to the sheriff or something. So this was posted February 26, 2017, so there were people noticing this quite a long time ago. Now, here's, again, I just have to reiterate, supposedly Snapchat, Kik, these are unsaved files, but here's the thing. As I've stated before, the Echelon spy satellite system has been up for a while. Who really believes that in 2017 anything really truly disappears? I mean, there's disappearance from consumer electronics, and then there's government data. So, all of this, if people believe that these advertising companies are mining all this data, what is the government capable of? So, government technology roughly 50 years ahead of civilian. Again, you can estimate that however you would like, but clearly government technology is far superior to what is currently available. You can go back over the past 100 years and trace all of this. I mean, government, they were using cell phones in the 50s. So, again, to think that this information can't be retrieved. Now, maybe they don't want to retrieve it. Maybe they don't want to go through national security protocols over a murder case. Because again, I'm not saying this is easy access technology where the FBI can just easily look it up. If this is some kind of top secret NSA spying program, I mean, how are they going to use this information in court? Would that necessarily help them? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Again, it's someone, an NSA agent would have to answer some of these questions, and they probably have top secret clearances, so then they wouldn't. But yeah, it's really weird. And then also the devices that he's wiping and then giving back to law enforcement. So here's something strange. So I don't know how accurate this information is. I knew a guy who worked in computer repair, and he did a lot of hard drive work. So supposedly you can still recover data from an information from a hard drive that has been wiped. Now, of course, there's different types of media. There's different types of wiping. But back in the day, I believe you had to wipe a hard drive like 3 or 4 times for it to be actually wiped. Whereas if you deleted everything, formatted it at once, again, it depends on the type of formatting. There's a lot of nuance here. I'm not an expert in hard drives. But if it has to be done a couple of times, I mean, could you still retrieve data from a wiped device? Either Liberty German's phone or otherwise. Again, there's the consumer answer, and then there's the top secret government answer. But even the guys that worked with hard drives, I mean, they were using consumer tech, and they basically stated if you want to delete something from your hard drive, you have to format it 3 or 4 times to really leave no trace of it. Again, I don't know if that's the same for different types of memory and phones, but again, it's just hard to believe that anything's really gone. Also, again, Klein's DNA was collected when he was arrested August 2020, as well as all these other individuals that have been arrested that are in connection with this case or considered as possible suspects. So, does that mean they know it's not him? If they have DNA. So, if they don't have DNA, then they can't rule him out. Again, always confusing in this case. It's also curious, so this could possibly explain the 2 sketches as well. I mean, this basically explains the sketches. Because if there's an individual they believe to have catfished them, do they believe? I mean, it's kind of, we don't know what law enforcement thought or believed initially and what they think or believe now. He also, I mean, Doug Carter didn't make any sense with his hybrid sketch comment where it's a combination of both sketches and things that just don't really make any kind of sense. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's the new info. I mean, went over a couple different scenarios. I mean, that could, it's hard. With law enforcement in this case, it's very difficult because is a newspaper article prompting the release of this info? Is it a combination of that? And also Klein basically reaching the end of his usefulness as a CI. Did he really give up information on possible other individuals in this ring? Who else had access to this account? Is this the key to solving everything? Because early on, this is what the rumors were. So to all the goofs out there that say, oh, the rumors are never true, if this is the case, it seems like this could play a role, just like geocaching can play a role. If Bridge Guy was a geocacher, not to mention, I mean, all of the cryptic comments about Bridge Guy arrested, did they mean the owner of the catfish account, which may or may not have been Bridge Guy, arrested? I mean, it's so cryptic. Law enforcement are so cryptic in this case. It's really difficult to really make heads or tails out of any of this. But we will continue to try in a logical and objective fashion
Typical Mindshock fashion. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime in the Delphi Case series. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal, help support the channel, like and share the podcast, subscribe to the channel, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, or debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.